Everybody, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Education for December 10th, 2024. With us tonight, we have David Krasnov, Jason Lee, Jennifer Jacobson, Katie Flynn, myself, Jeff Peterson, Superintendent Testani, Carol Guernsey, Jen McAnally, and Nick Asa, and Ms. Rinaldi, also with our student representatives from various schools. And if you'll join me to take the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and we'll begin with student reports.
So tomorrow we have the blood drive. It's the American Red Cross Club is hosting a blood drive tomorrow in the small gym, and then anyone 17 or older can donate. Basically, if you donate, you save a life. So there's no reason not to. I'm donating tomorrow at 11:15. I get free cookies. So
this Friday, December 13th, the sophomore class will be hosting their winter dance in themed Winter Wonderland from 7 to 10 p.m. in the Ludlow cafeteria.
So tomorrow we have candlelight. No, sorry, the 18th. Sorry. 19th. Wow, got the date wrong again too. Ooh, off to a bad start. 6:30 to 8:30 at the FHS music department for the middle schoolers and the elementary schoolers. Sorry, that's on Wednesday 18th. We're performing for the middle schoolers and the elementary schoolers, and then the day after that, 19th, 6:30 to 8:30. Families the public, and then on Friday we have the school candlelight concert.
Winter sports have begun practicing. The season officially started for most sports, but some such as basketball or sports you need to try out for are still trying out.
So we had the Poetry Out Loud contest. That was last Wednesday. First time we've ever held it. It's basically a poetry recitation competition for students across the country. And the winner this year is a sophomore called Ananika Martins. And then she's going to states later on this year. And then the runners-up were junior Isabel Vasquez Saints and sophomore Emma Drow.
We will be hosting our annual gingerbread house building competition this Thursday, December 12th. It costs $5 to enter, and it's a really fun activity to do during lunch. All proceeds go to the Compassion.
Speaking of the Compassion Drive, the Compassion Committee, which is hosting that, is having their gift card drive as well that same week. Basically, you donate money and they get gift cards for people in need.
FBLA is the Future Business Leaders of America Club, is hosting a hot chocolate kit sale in the lobby from the 16th to the 20th of December to make money, raise money for their club.
So the Art Honor Society will be hosting a sale of ornaments handmade by the students in the Art Honor Society program. They'll be selling the ornaments outside of Holland Hill Elementary School, and all the proceeds go to their charity of choice. This year it's the Bridgeport Mission.
A group of Fairfield Ludlow High School students in the AP photography class had a field trip to Adam J. Lewis Academy last week. Photographers provided portraits to low-income families who may not be able to afford them. Ms. Hermson, the head of the Fairfield Public Schools art program and a teacher at Fairfield Ludlow, called this project the Portrait of Giving, which received funding through a $1,000 grant from the Connecticut State Department of Education. More info is available on the CT Post.
I'm sure you all heard we made playoffs this year for football. It's a really big deal because for about 15 years, it was really monumentous to get a over 500 win rate percentage. So, we were always lower than 50% on wins. Great times, but we finally made the playoffs this year. Sadly, we lost, but it was great to watch. It was a Darien. It was really cold, but it was a great atmosphere there.
The Appalachia's Drama Department will be sending 14 students to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, I believe, which is the largest theater festival in the whole world. This is located in Scotland. American High School Theater Festival, which is the name of the festival, hosts colleges and high school students to participate. There is an application process, and the FLHS drama department was accepted for their fall play Pride and Prejudice. Students are currently actively fundraising to lower the cost of the trip. One way they're fundraising is they're selling socks in the cafeteria during lunch waves from December 11th to the 13th. And this year's spring play will be Big Fish. Auditions are today and tomorrow. Yay. I think that's all.
All right, so good evening, board and guests. To begin, held on December 17th and performances at 6:30 and 8:30 p.m. We have our annual Carillon concert. The FWHS Music Department is completely delighted to announce it. Followed by 2 in-school performances this Friday, allowing our student body to enjoy this annual event. It's a long-lasting tradition for Mustangs to definitely, take part of that before break. Actually, I'm sorry, I misspoke. The in-school performances are before the after-school performances. Yesterday, we began the week with a trip to Radio City, the music department as well. The Fairfield Ward Choir Department performed at Radio City this past, just yesterday, in New York City. This was a good opportunity to showcase their talents while opening for the Rockettes. And then yesterday as well, the English department also took a trip at the same time. To enhance our study of the book we're reading, Man's Search for Meaning, the 12th graders at Ward took a field trip to Yale University Library to view the Bylaw collection on the field. In addition to that, the Fairfield Ward Book Club is organizing a bookshelf boost book drive with the goal to acquire 100 books that will be donated to a local elementary school. This drive concludes on Friday, December 20th. So the Ward PTA is excited to share a holiday shopping guide filled with local vendors contributing some of their proceeds. More info can be found on our principal's online pages. And next week for the fun stuff, on Friday, December 20th, the Stampede Club will be hosting a dodgeball event after school. They will also be sponsoring along with the forum at Ward, and that will take place outside of school hours. Finally, on that same day, we'll be having pajama day in light of break. So students and staff, if they're up for it, are encouraged to wear pajamas, deemed or just winter. Wish you all and your families a good holiday season and happy New Year. The Ward.
Here's what's happening at WFC. WFC students went to the Fairfield Museum last week. Many of our students moved to town after elementary school and missed the rite of passage of learning about our town. A special tour was created just for us. Thank you to the Fairfield Museum and History Center. A parent generously restrung our electric guitar for our Physics of Music class. Thank you so much. WFC apparel and merchandise is in the works. A club dedicated to designing and creating WFC swag and created prototypes have been produced thanks to our donated die-cut machine and materials.
MPEC students participated in this year's CEA Holiday Beer Project. This year, Connecticut teachers sponsored 800 Connecticut students in shopping for Christmas for each student nominated. MPEC sponsored 6-year-old boys. That purchase MPEC students helped by selecting age appropriate and doing all the wrapping. Just today, WFC was identified as a blue school for our participation in the Long Island program and our outstanding curriculum involving oceans. You can see our new flag flying on campus. Last week, WFC held an award ceremony for students who made achievements in attendance, citizenship, academic achievements, and other areas. Congratulations to all the recipients. On behalf of all the students and staff at WFC, we wish you all a happy holiday season, and we will see you in the new year. Please accept our gifts of 4 ounces of honey
I always love the company gifts and yeah, the saga of the beehive is always. Any other questions or comments for our?
Just out of curiosity, stock that you're selling? What's up with the socks? Are they special socks or?
I have no idea. All I know is we're selling socks in our gap.
Oh, I didn't know if there were some special socks that we could, place an order for.
You can, I think, order them online, so maybe we can get the information to the board in case they're interested in.
Okay, that'd be great.
Mr. Lee?
Who won the football game on Thanksgiving?
That would happen to be us, actually.
Just checking.
I think I saw you there.
Hey, how'd Dallas do on Monday?
Not important. It's all about the community.
Not on our agenda,
Oh,
Mr.
I'm
Brad.
Just wanted to thank Walter Fitzgerald for the gifts and wish all of you a really happy holidays.
I was gonna say the same thing, so thank you so much. You all wonderful holiday. Thank you for being here.
Spending your here with us. Like to go, we understand that too. But thank you very much for coming tonight. All right, so we'll move on to public comment. At this time, we're happy to receive people up to comment on items that are on tonight's agenda. 3 minutes per person. Please just state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Nina Fatahi and I live at 88 Overhill Road. I want to thank you so much for being here as often as you guys are. It's incredible the amount of volunteer work that you all do, and it does not go unnoticed or underappreciated. I am the VP of Digital Wellness for PTAC. It's a new position that was started this year. And I'm here as a representative of everybody in the town of Fairfield. I can tell you that everybody cares about digital wellness and the role of technology and how it plays in our schools and how it impacts our children at home and in their social lives. But the reality is that people just don't have the time to do the advocacy that some of us do have the time to do. The number of emails or comments I get of people thanking me for doing the work that they wish that they could do is countless. People are just saying, thank you so much. This is something that's so important. And I really hope that we can finally get things changed. So this is my position statement. I'm hoping that the BOE can prioritize and balance and intentionally device-based education. The Digital Wellness Committee advocates for a more thoughtful and balanced approach to integrating tech into the classroom. While technology can offer unique opportunities, an over-reliance in devices risks diminishing comprehension, creativity, and socio-emotional development. I can say that 100% is also, I think, applicable to adults. When I was in my undergraduate, I didn't have a cell phone. And when I was in graduate school, I did. And the experience was so different. I socialized less with my peers because I had a phone in my hand. I felt like the materials that I was reading over my laptop versus an actual hard textbook, I had to reread the materials on the computer because it just was a really different experience, and you don't get to highlight and write some notes in the index or on the sides. We recommend embracing proven practices such as prioritizing printed text and handwriting, using transformative technology sparingly, and avoiding gamified platforms or social media as teaching tools. Additionally, policies like going phone-free during the school day and limiting screen time for young learners will protect focus, mental health, and foundational skill development. By adopting these strategies and creating a comprehensive district tech plan, we ensure technology enhances learning without compromising the well-being and growth of our students. Obviously, this should also include a cell phone policy to keep phones out of the students' hands during the entirety of the school day. As our superintendent, Mr. Testani, has repeatedly said, the phones are impacting our children even more than we can imagine. Let's follow the lead of other reputable school districts, our neighbors, and give our children 8 hours of phone-free school hours. It will improve their academic focus, allow them to more deeply engage with peers, and reduce the realities of addiction to their devices. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
The comments, so.
Hi, Lauren Eppman, 241 Burr Street. I'm also speaking on behalf of PTAC Digital Wellness, which I'm a member, and the greater community at large who are concerned with the reliance on technology in our school curriculum, specifically the LMC. We need a comprehensive tech policy that includes a bell-to-bell cell phone ban and promotes responsible use of school-issued devices. This should not only support state testing, but also prioritize traditional learning methods such as pencil and paper, peer collaboration, and textbooks. Screen reliance starts as early as kindergarten, and by 3rd grade, children are using gaming apps disguised as educational tools, isolating themselves from face-to-face learning. We know teenagers on average spend 7 hours a day on screens. This is a growing crisis fostered not only at home, but in our schools, but we can change that. Please ask yourselves the following questions. At what age do students in our district begin using computer-aided educational tools? What safety measures are in place on school-issued devices? Are students able to access platforms like YouTube or communicate with strangers? Is pornography and other inappropriate content effectively filtered? Who made the decision to transition from traditional textbooks to Chrome-based learning? What is the annual cost of Chromebooks, including licenses and maintenance? How does the cost of Chromebooks compare to that of traditional textbooks? Has student performance improved since the implementation of Chromebooks in the classroom? Are Chromebook requirements mandated by federal, state, or local policies, or are they a school district decision? Are there guidelines or limits on the amount of screen time students are exposed to during the school day? Is it feasible for the district to revert to traditional pen and paper methods? Can parents install or monitor their own monitoring or safety software such as Bark on school-issued devices that are sent home with students? And is federal funding tied in any way to Chromebook implementation? I know those are a lot of questions, but I think we should be asking ourselves those. I think it's important. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Any other public comment? Oh, please.
Realize the irony of me using my phone. Good evening. My name is Deb Lauren Poole. I live at 61 Blake Drive. I have a middle school student at Roger Ludlow and a high school student at Fairfield Ludlow. I am here to address the broader issue of technology in schools. Specifically, I'd like to propose a bell-to-bell no phone policy as well. I really believe in creating a distraction-free environment where students can fully engage in their education and develop critical social and academic skills. And the good news is we are not alone in recognizing this issue. August, we found out that the Connecticut State Board of Education has really started to emphasize that schools must address the impact that technology, social media, and phones has on learning and mental health. And though they also strongly recommend restricting phone use during the day to support this engagement, the emotional well-being, and interpersonal skills. So yes, it is not just the parents who are worried, it is the experts too. And I also understand that there are potential parental pushback concerns, which can make it challenging for schools, specifically their principals, to implement this on their own. And this is precisely why the board leadership really comes into play. I think without a district-wide mandate, it's going to be really hard because we're placing undue pressure on individual schools and administrators to do this by themselves. And a clear district-wide policy based on state guidance and proven research can really set the tone for change. This approach will also allow us to focus on really providing support for those that may find this transition challenging, which is always part of the problem. And it ensures that everyone, students, staff, and parents really get the success and support they need with that transition. And the Digital Wellness Committee is already building a team of ambassadors who can serve as school representatives to be that first line of defense. Now, my concern is that the current policies, which do exist, are really entrusting that these preteens and teenagers are self-managing devices that are like slot machines in their pockets. And then these partial policies also really create loopholes, such as I know even my high school student says that people are putting dummy phones in the pockets and then using the real phones in their laps. So it's just not a perfect system, and we could always evolve it. And I know that it's shown that students would actually feel relieved to be phone-free for a few hours, knowing that all their peers are also phone-free too. It really takes everyone being phone-free, and then kids can relax. So if schools are here to really prepare kids for an ever-evolving digital world, which we know we have, then I'm really advocating for doubling down on the foundations of academics and well-being.
Good wrap up or wrap up, sorry.
Okay, two more sentences. Thanks to the library curriculum for introducing these innovative strategies that are going to get them ready for careers in digital areas. But I also want to create clear policies on personal phone use to ensure that we don't interrupt the education and mental health required to prepare them. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Where's the mic? Make sure I lean in enough to be heard.
I have to. It's a smart room now.
I'm trying to hear, because I couldn't hear people in the
We pick up everything, including the audience, so whispers are heard too, so.
Rosie Rao, 42
Yeah, it's-
Osborne Place. Want to start by just saying thank you for your time on a topic I feel very strongly about. As you review the library media curriculum tonight, and I would ask that you please consider the following as it relates to the use and access to technology during the school day. Research continues to emerge daily on the negative impact technology is playing on our children, including its use and or access during the school day. And addiction, lack of concentration, impact on reading comprehension and mental health, and review. Unfortunately, our children are operating as guinea pigs for the tech companies whose executives send their children to private schools that boast being technology free until 7th or 8th grade, while our schools unfortunately have tech requirements for kindergartners. Both of my daughters, Kay and 2nd grade, have come home and mentioned they watched a movie at school today. My only recollection of watching a movie at school was a special treat maybe one time a year growing up, where it sounds like this is more of a regular occurrence for my children. I'm concerned that we're prioritizing tech requirements for my kindergartner instead of repurposing this time, energy, and effort to ensure her ability for basic reading and writing. While my primary focus is the elementary school at this time, given where my children are, middle and high school are around the corner, and I'd strongly encourage the district to proactively develop a comprehensive approach to technology to address these concerns with a frequent review of the content to ensure our district is staying current with the ever-evolving landscape. If you haven't had the opportunity to read the New York Times bestseller, Anxious Generation, I brought a copy here for each of you. Mr. Testani, I know you read it, so I didn't bring you a copy. It's based on research and highlights the lack of protection for children in the digital world, compounded by the protection and lack of age-appropriate independence for children in their physical world. The book was fascinating, eye-opening, and alarming, to say the least. I hope that you'll take the time to read the book if you haven't already, and partner with the community to devise a plan that addresses the concerns shared. Again, many thank you to you all for your time and your service to our schools.
Thank you very much.
Laura Veneman, 106 Blue Ridge Road. The library curriculum gives us an opportunity to ask the questions on how technology should be interacting with our students. I have concerns about the amount of technology that the kids are being exposed to. While I limited my kids' exposures to TV and personal devices prior to them coming to school, since they started in school, there has not been a day that goes by that they haven't had interaction with technology. And the question I have is how much is acceptable? The library curriculum frequently mentions acceptable use policy without any mention of how much is acceptable. While I know devices were necessary during COVID, I question how frequently they need to be interacting with these devices now that they are back in school. It breaks my heart to hear that at Indoor Resource, my third grader struggles to get kids to play with him. And since instead, many opt to play on their Chromebooks individually. Kids need to be interacting with one another to build their social skills, a skill that they can't get from their computer. I recognize that Chromebooks and smart screens is my family's biggest challenge now that my kids are in elementary school, but I recognize that cell phone policy is also in my future. 3 states have gone so far as to ban cell phones in school. While Connecticut is allowing the district to handle, I hope we can be proactive in setting a district-wide technology policy.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Tori Donahue, 1022 Mill Hill Road. I have a 4th grader and a 1st grader at Mill Hill, and one coming up behind who is in preschool. Thank you so much. I have an inordinate amount of appreciation and excitement about this meeting, to know that we can discuss appropriate technology policy for all of our students in Fairfield, regardless of the type of school they're in. In preparing, I'm always reading about this, but in preparing, I learned that Oxford's word of the year is brain rot. Brain rot. And largely in the context of the use of social media and the effects that it has on developing minds. This comes at a time when our students have never had more access to smart boards, to personal devices, to screens in the classroom. And the coincidence of those two, I think, can't be overlooked when we look forward to setting a policy that helps our students be empowered learners while also managing the reality that this technology exists in the world and is something they need to be prepared for. I think that we all know, and the book establishes it better than anywhere else, the relationship between mental health, but also the physical health and the need for resilience, independent play, unstructured time that is absolutely constrained by the use of screens. Another phrase that I think is really important to consider is around opportunity blockers and just the opportunity cost of interacting with screens over peers, adult facilitators, fresh air, things like that. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to the need for a district-wide technology policy, not only for our library media curriculum and in the school setting, but I think to the degree that there really is a lot of interconnectedness with personal device policies. I know that we have certain policies now, but the hodgepodge patchwork enforcement, I think lack of awareness could really be helped and resolved by having a district-wide policy that puts an umbrella, but also just sort of sets a vibe for all of it. That there is a proactive approach, that teachers are made aware of it, that students are made aware of it, as opposed to every classroom looking a little bit different, both on the rules that are set, but also the enforcement and the follow through. So I really am looking forward to this. I hope to be a resource to the degree that any of us can. And thank you so much again.
Very much. Any further comment?
I'll try to be brief. My name is Nina Salzman. I have a son at Sherman Elementary in 2nd grade and a daughter at Ludlow High School. So I'm speaking on both ends. I don't have a prepared statement. This was kind of a last minute thing for me, but I feel very passionately about the technology policy. I do feel that the district needs to step up and create a policy, a district-wide policy, because parents, students, I think teachers are really looking to you to set those boundaries. It's not fair to put that on the parents. It's not fair to put that on the teachers. So I think it's the responsibility of the Board of Education to set that policy district-wide. I also wanted to question why 3rd graders are receiving Chromebooks so early in their education. I know neighboring districts wait on that, and I think it's not age appropriate to be introducing Chromebooks to the hands of an 8-year-old. That's not fair to the children. It's not fair to the parents to have to reinforce those boundaries. And recently, my son's principal sent an email home because children were opening their Chromebooks up on the bus, and it was causing all sorts of challenges. So I question the educational necessity of introducing Chromebooks at third grade. I think it should wait. There's plenty of research that shows that the actual physical act of handwriting is instrumental in cognition, in learning, in memory, in reading and writing. There's a recent article on NPR. You can Google it. In fact, I forwarded it to this committee. So I encourage you to do your research because the actual physical act of handwriting is super important to memory and learning, especially when the children are still learning to form their letters, et cetera, et cetera. I could go on and on. So I also wanted to say that my daughter in middle school, they never brought cell phones. She was at Roger Ludlow Middle School. I never heard about her texting me during the day. I never heard about cell phones coming out when substitute teachers were in the classroom. Now she's in the high school. She's texting me during lunchtime. I went to pick her up early from school. Children are walking through the halls with their cell phones. Why is this allowed? And also substitute teachers. Don't the teachers hand off some sort of program when the teacher's absent? No, my daughter's watching movies with her friend on the cell phone. So I really, we are the teachers and myself, parents, everyone, we're really looking to you to really set some boundaries and some policy. And I do hope that next year when my son is in third grade, he's still learning, he's writing his letters backwards still. I really hope that he's not going to be given a Chromebook. And I hope you look at other districts to see what they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. So I'm Ellie Fatahi, 19 Flora Boulevard. So as you review the library media curriculum, please consider that not all applications are harmless. Uncontrolled access to the internet is detrimental, and gamification apps overstimulate, distract, and demotivate students from learning. Kids are falling behind academically, socially, and emotionally, and a large part of it is due to what Jonathan Haidt refers to as the underprotection of children in the digital world. Screen-based technology can isolate students from their teachers and peers and decrease real-world social skills. In the classroom, tech can be instrumental, but needs to be aligned with current research and used appropriately. Not all tech is equal, and our current haphazard approach on minimally regulated Chromebooks has dire consequences, including inattention, social isolation, and in some cases, gaming addiction, exposure to pornography, and self-harm, as kids use proxy sites on their Chromebooks or their personal devices during the day. It is our responsibility to increase protections and limit students' time spent in the digital world, whether it's on Chromebooks or personal devices. Bring our kids back to the real world with real world experiences, giving them the confidence to thrive. Embrace tech when it is transformative, such as website design, robotics, or coding. We need a district technology plan that includes an acceptable use policy for student devices and research-driven protocols to thoughtfully evaluate apps, licenses, software, and devices currently being used and determine which one is aligned with healthy tech use and which ones are disruptive and lead to habitual use. The Connecticut State Board of Education issued a position statement and policy guidance in August stating that local boards of education should develop and enact district-wide policy and strongly recommends restricting cell phones during the day. I'm curious, what has Fairfield's Board of Ed done to address this? With all the emerging data around the impact of underprotecting children in the digital world, we now know better, and it is our responsibility to do better and to develop and implement tech policies, whether educational or personal devices, to drive healthy academic and social outcomes. Please see the supplementing documents I provided earlier for references to the research-based model of healthy classroom tech use. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, James Geisler, 17 Bullfrog Lane. I might be the closer. Parents have invited me to present tonight from the perspective of a professional in the field with the intersection of technology and mental health. I've spent several years now teaching kids to be comfortable.
By this, I mean interacting with one another, learning social cues, and how to have a conversation. Working with them on their subjective experiences of taking big risks, which often involves attending social events and engaging and interacting with others on a daily basis. I walk with them through issues such as how to implement a boundary, how to say no, how to use their voice, and how to advocate for what they need. The biggest issue affecting the population I work with nationwide is forming meaningful connections. They struggle with loneliness and isolation despite their whole world literally in their hand, at least electronically. They rely heavily on their parents to carry out their interpersonal conflict, their grade obstacles, and their basic decision-making. And I'm no longer surprised when I hear an average of 5+ hours a day spent on their phones. I don't work in an elementary school. I don't even work in a middle school, nor do I work in a high school. The issues described tonight are that of an average 18-year-old in college. My name is Dr. James Geisler, and I oversee college mental health and wellness here in Fairfield. I'm the author of Thrive Year One, the only interactive resource written by a mental health professional in higher education to prepare high school senior mental health for college and the demands of college. I'm the recent moderator of Thrive Together, one of a series of events focused on loneliness and connection in partnership with Silver Hill Hospital. The national data on student mental health, especially in college populations, is alarming to say the least. Self-harm, suicidal thoughts and behaviors, depression, loneliness, anxiety, eating concerns, just a few of the most pressing issues facing college students today. The only surprise to me on this national data is that it's not higher. In my field, a really good mental health counselor is one who can clearly identify and respond to the underlying problem of one's suffering, not the symptoms. Depression, anxiety, suicide, loneliness, isolation, eating concerns, and non-suicidal self-injury are all symptoms of the sacrifice of human connection in favor of a screen. In speaking from the mental health perspective, shining a greater light on the point that these issues did not begin in the summer transition between high school and college. They began when we favored convenience over connection through digital avenues. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I appreciate you all.
So was he the closer or is there anyone else? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much for your comments. We'll move on to item 5, presentation, first reading, a presentation of gifted curriculum.
On your left side. Good evening, everybody. James Ojancic, Chief Academic Officer. And before I turn it over to Julie Heller, who will kick off our presentation, I just want to say this gifted curriculum was a long time in the making, which our group will talk about. We did take the feedback from our August presentation to the Board of Ed as a status update and incorporated a lot of those comments into the curriculum that is before you tonight. One thing I do have to say before we begin, we have another member of our team there, Molly Farrell, our principal of Holland Hill. And she has been working, first let me thank her for working with this group, but she's been working behind the scenes and is here to help with the presentation as well as answer questions. She was an elementary teacher as well as a gifted teacher for about a decade. So she brings vast knowledge to this domain in our elementary and our middle schools as well. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Julie to get us started.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Julie Heller. I'm the coordinator for the 3 through 8 Gifted Workshop program. I also want to thank Molly for her insight and her guidance. So we're here tonight to just share a few highlights of our program and some of our units of study. I'm going to turn it over to my gifted team. Let them take you through some of the topics.
My name is Ann Joyce. I'm the gifted teacher for the 3 middle schools. I'm going to start off by just recapping on what a gifted student is. Someone who demonstrates exceptionalism in areas such as intellectual, creative, or leadership abilities and often performs at higher levels than their peers. At the same time, gifted students may struggle with feelings of isolation, perfectionism, or high expectations. For these reasons, that gifted students need services and a place to come together, tackle challenging work, take risks, sometimes fail,
build resilience and confidence, grow as individuals. We develop units that are high interest and offer opportunities for all type of learners to contribute, whether they're natural leaders, creative thinkers, organizers, analytical problem solvers, or hands-on learners. To inform our choices, we tapped into UConn's resources, collaborated with other gifted programs, both locally and nationally over the years, asking questions as what activities yield the highest levels of learning and thinking, and where do your students find the greatest success? This approach allowed us to design units that foster deep critical thinking and engagement. These principles listed here strengthen students' knowledge, nurture a passion for learning, and equip them to make a positive difference in the world.
I'm Sheila Ferrara. I am an elementary resource teacher, and I work in 6 of the elementary schools. I don't need to name them. I lose track. This is what makes the gifted program and the gifted curriculum different than general educational curriculum. All of our units are interdisciplinary with a focus on problem solving and critical thinking. Students learn a great deal about themselves while tackling real world problems, many times unplugged. And all of the units are intentionally designed to foster collaboration as well as self-motivation and independence. The project-based units offer the students more time to dig into a topic, allowing students to create projects that reflect their research and community connectedness. And our problem-based units are designed to nurture our students' ability to think divergently through multiple lenses as they look at real world issues. Both approaches allow students to explore their interests, to make connections with each other and between their opinions, their research, and their authentic audience.
I'm Tanya Ron. I'm at the other elementary school, Sheila. To address the student needs of the special population, we developed these units of study to be both robust and challenging, specifically tailored for our gifted students. You may notice recurring paired themes throughout our units, grades 3 through 8. This is purposeful to account for gifted students' asynchronous learning across those grades. You'll notice that you'll see personal growth and individuality, social responsibility and leadership, cultural awareness and global perspectives, innovation and design thinking, exploration and curiosity, civic engagement and justice, as well as environmental awareness and sustainability. These themes illustrate a progression of complexity as students advance through the grades, fostering interconnected learning experiences.
We are most proud of the work we do surrounding what it means to be a gifted learner. Addressing myths, stereotypes, navigating intensities when it comes to learning and social relationships, and using gifts and talents to make a positive impact on the world. And I just want to add as a side note from all the conversations we've had with other programs, we do an exceptional job with this that other districts, I don't believe, match. All our units are vertically aligned, as Tanya had mentioned. Across grades 6 through 8, we focus on public speaking, a skill not often practiced in the general education setting. Grade 6 students deliver counterclaims in their debates. And grade 7 and 8 students focus on audience appeal when presenting arguments. Another thematic unit in our curriculum focuses on personal and social responsibility, where students explore community challenges, take part in initiatives that promote positive change, and develop actionable plans to create solutions. On the more creative side, students design games, incorporating the elements of fairy tales studied in 6th grade, and participate in a scavenger hunt experience inspired by their 7th grade mythology unit. Math and science-based puzzles, coding, Solving equations to unlock clues and pattern recognition are integrated in our 8th grade escape room designs.
It's important that we connect core curriculum concepts into our gifted work outcomes, helping students see the real relevance of what they're learning while deepening their understanding. Sorry. This approach sparks curiosity and helps students develop a love of learning, giving them the chance to explore topics in more meaningful and creative ways.
So we know gifted students flourish when given the opportunity to explore their own interests because it keeps them motivated and excited about learning. When they can immerse themselves in topics that spark their curiosity, they build valuable skills like problem solving, creativity, and independent thinking. Our independent studies, all called something different at each level, are a blend of structure and flexibility. Students are guided as they explore their passions, develop a thoughtful proposal, and begin their self-directed journey. And with that, we'll open it up to questions or comments that you have about it.
Thank you very much for the presentation and for the curricular documents that we reviewed prior to this meeting. Does anyone want to begin with questions? One must have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Guernsey.
Thank you so much for this preparation and for your responsiveness to the, the board input. Appreciate all of this. And I guess like one of the things that I feel most excited about in this document is that you've maintained these unit ones throughout that are all about self-discovery. And that's something that I think that we've done really well through this program and we should feel really proud of. And I love the creativity that you've brought to these units throughout the 6 years. So that I'm really excited about. I do have some questions about the other units because I'm just wondering like the timeline for them. So like to me, they sound sort of short for this sort of idea of exploration. So I just was wondering if you could speak to sort of how you came to like this week period. How did you land upon that?
I think I could speak to that about the project-based learning versus problem-based learning.
Sure.
The project, it takes longer. We're still in the middle of a museum exhibit and it's just going on because they're building and creating and their projects are taking longer than expected. But yet when we do, thinking of the social scenarios unit, you can only dive into these issues for so long. They're short, they're interesting. We started one today where they were talking about they're a CEO of a company and they have to drill and dig up land that penguins are living on. And what's more important, digging up the lithium for your batteries or saving the penguins? And, they had this quick discussion and they were all digging in and figuring out how to go with it. But once they came up with their, 2-minute decision, it's kind of over. Then we can move on to another one, but they can only do that for so long. A project takes much longer, where a problem.
And I guess that's what I was sort of getting at, the project base, because what I'm wondering, because this is, a lot of these concepts are new, right? These themes are new, and some of them kind of grabbed my attention. I thought, wow, I could imagine that students might spend a much longer time on this. And so I wondered, because when we build curriculum over this long period of time, and how can we be reflective and responsive to students as they're becoming engaged in these projects that are really grabbing their attention. And it's hard to know that when you're doing something that you've never done before. So just wanting to understand like the openness to that and how the timeline could be flexible.
It has to be flexible.
Right. No, that's fantastic. And then the other thing I was wondering if you could speak to is like, what does this look like? Like, where is this program? How is it implemented? Like, what does it look like for a student in grade 3 or grade 6? And then also along with that, what resources do you need to make this happen?
speak about where you mean implementation. I just want to make sure.
Physically where, like where are the students located? How are they coming together? How are they being grouped? Who's teaching them?
I just want to make sure I'm answering what
Yeah,
you were asking.
the
there. So,
whole thing.
when we came to you in August, we had a different plan. Tonight, we are proposing that middle school remain within their building. That would require increased FTE of a gifted teacher, 1.0. And elementary schools shift to one of two buildings not yet identified within the district, 1 day a week. When I say 1 day, that includes travel time to the school and back from the school to get to their home school to go home, as well as any sort of in-between activities that would happen, like if lunch happens in between there or recess of some sort. With that, there would be no FTE increase. There would be transportation costs for the elementary.
And are these estimates that you'll be providing us with?
Yeah, so again, the middle school would require an additional teacher. We've estimated with the bus company about $150,000 in transportation costs, and that would for the entire school year. And that would entail, as James mentioned, 2 sites, one yet to be determined. And they could be elementary school, middle schools. I mean, we want to find the most appropriate space. We also want to do it in proximity. That's going to best serve in getting the kids to and from their home school. And so those are the details we still have out in terms of what schools, and then how we can be more flexible based on the groupings and things like that. But I think that's separate from the curriculum approval, but obviously there's a price tag in any way you do it. If we tried to keep everything in their home school, it would increase the budget significantly because we would need a lot more teachers to stay within 11 elementary schools. There would be no way to do it with two teachers. Not to the extent that we're proposing the program to be. And just to clarify, they would go 1 day in the 6-day rotation. Not once per week. So we do run a 6-day rotation.
For elementary, and then what is the time commitment for middle school?
The middle school would look a little bit differently. We would have 2 teachers that would service the 3 middle schools, but similarly, it would be a submersive day working in their groups.
An entire day at the middle school?
So the middle school has a little more flexibility in terms of when they can pull students because they're with them all day. So the time could look a little bit different. Like a straight 7-hour day versus, pulling flex times throughout the week, different periods throughout.
Much more time that's currently committed.
And for the groupings then, we talked a little bit about this, are you still considering grouping across grades possibly depending on like the numbers of students and whatever? Or, I mean, these themes, it gets like the themes run in strands necessarily across grades. So what?
It'd be by grade level. Third
Would be by
grade would be grouped with third, fourth, and fifth.
Thank you.
To follow up on one of Mrs. Guernsey's questions and actually something that's coming up right now, it was a little eye-opening to me that flex time couldn't be utilized for gifted. And more when we talk about that flex period, it just seems to be continually not very flexible to meet the needs of students. And this is a need. And what are the students doing during that time frame? Because I know a lot of other students are silent reading, using IXL. I assume that's not probably the best spending of their time.
Students are pulled during flex. I'm between 3 schools now. There's only 2 flex Tuesdays and Fridays. So right now I could, when I'm in a building on a flex day, absolutely pull during flex time, all 3 grades. But I do have to pull for academic as well because I only have 2, I'm between the 3 schools. If we increase the FTE, the teachers will have more opportunity to utilize that flex, but we do definitely pull flex.
It says pretty explicitly in the document that we're not utilizing flex time, so that's in the questions on page 3. It's Mrs. Guernsey's question. It would not be possible to fit the expanded program in flex time.
We can't fit the full program only during class time.
Adding that word full might be.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think
Clear on that.
that period is not being utilized for this subset of students. For me was a little concerning. So right off the bat, that was my first question. So thank you for that answer.
So before,
No, thank you so much for this presentation.
Mr. Krasnoff.
Thank you very much. I do want to thank you for taking a lot of stuff that we commented on and trying to put it together. This, to me, looks more like the gifted program that I'm used to seeing in other schools. A little bit more robust, more time oriented, to do like the one location thing. I think it would be good to get a lot of like-minded kids together in one location versus 3 or 4 kids in a room that they have class together. That being said, are these days gonna be part problem solving and part project, or each day it might just be a project day, might just be a problem solving day? You're gonna try to integrate a little bit of both every day? Is that correct? I didn't understand by reading the document.
I think it would be where they were in the unit.
So it's just gonna be one unit. It won't be like a problem solving and a project unit, maybe.
No, it would be the unit they're in, and that would be what they were doing that day, and it might go for several weeks, 6 to 8 weeks that they're in that unit.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. But I think that's it. Thank you. I like the work you did. It's a lot, like different and more robust than we saw originally.
Mr. Lee.
Can you explain why there's a dip in gifted students in the middle school this year compared to last year? You're down, I believe, 10 students, right? In the middle school program.
Fine, but yeah. Typically we do see kids that will drop off, especially get up to 8th grade. Well, there's two. There's students who don't like to miss class because we do have to use some academic time. So for some reason, they don't feel comfortable missing class, they will opt out of the program. But what I see more is when they get up to 8th grade, they just decide it's not for them. And so they will ask to no longer participate in it. Gifted for us is when kids need something outside the general education classroom, and if they feel like they're getting what they need within the classroom and they don't need that extra. But that's the reason why. They're always welcome to come back. I don't like when they leave, but sometimes, just as a parent myself, I had an 8th grade dropout at one point, but it's just he didn't need it anymore.
Mr. Lee, are you talking about the level of identification or how often they attend?
How, I'm looking at the identification, I see the 3 total.
So like grade 6, and these were last year's numbers, just to be clear, I gave them in August as well. The new numbers are currently in the mix, we just don't have them available now. We're in the review process of 6th grade. Last year had 48, which we would assume is 7th this year. 7th had 30 and 8th had 34. So more students were identified in one year than the other. And that's just through our process of PPT review that this sort of happens. How many parents request reviews, how many meet the cut score. So that does vary every now and then.
Does it fluctuate during the school year where a parent may ask for a PPT to say, hey, I think this child may be gifted?
It's unusual, but it's not the norm. So we do these parents who request a PPT for identification. The majority get identified through the group PPT process that we do, but that we are doing right now.
Ms. Rinaldi.
Could I just get more clarity on the identification? I guess for me too, is there any sort of qualitative or I guess subjective element to it for people that aren't, data driven or good test takers, like myself as well?
Yeah.
Do you want us to speak to the current way we do it? Or
Yes, well, the current and if any changes or, the thought process behind the changes, if there are going to be revisions as well.
The current way we do it is we have, administer the COGAT Naglieri. If the students hit a certain score, they're automatically in the program. If they hit a range right before that cutoff score, they go into review. That's how we currently do that. We want to move away from that, as research shows you shouldn't be using a single cut score. So we would like to be able to review all students,
Okay.
and we would use teacher rating scales, perhaps performance tasks, observation. What am I missing?
Still utilize the test, but not.
And still use the test.
I think that's a good compromise. That makes sense. Thank you.
And just to add on to that, all students are tested. And years ago, we used to only use the COGAT, which is a very academic test. Like you said, for really good test takers do well on that. We added the Naglieri, gosh, about 10 years ago, I'm not sure, a long time ago. And that was to kind of access those kids who maybe aren't such good test takers, but might have some really good like visual skills. They see patterns really well. It's a completely nonverbal test. So when we added that to the process, we've started to see some kids who were more of those like out of the box thinkers that might not have been the best students, but they actually had some really good giftedness in them. So that made a big difference, I think, back when we made that change, and that's still going. And then in the review process, there is some more subjective qualitative data that's looked at in terms of work samples, talking to parents. So we do kind of try to look at the whole.
I could also add, if you, within the documents, you'll notice they're all one-year curriculums. With the change from the current practice, we currently score in third around this time of the year, and students begin mid-January. We're proposing to start the year with it and score in second, where teachers have had a longer range of student. It was the 2 months within there.
And I think too, just the focus on emotional intelligence, which is one aspect of intelligence. I feel as though this document is getting to that. But I mean, even I think just saying it is important. On that, which is probably the most important.
Mr. Krasnoff and then Ms. Kersey.
I have a follow-up to that about the process. We're gonna start visiting second grade classrooms, it's like observing, to just kind of get a feel for yourself versus just 1 through 5, circle what you think sheet. The feedback I've heard from certain teachers is they don't necessarily know what the scale they're filling out means. So, you know, I may be someone that will never put a 5, even if it's very good at something. So I circle all 4s saying, yeah, this kid's very good. But another teacher may say, oh, all my kids are outstanding, I'm gonna give them all 5s. That kid that has the teacher that gives 5 shouldn't have a leg up on someone who has a teacher that gives 4s. It's just, to me, an inaccurate science. Versus you observing someone in the classroom and actually talking to the teacher and the examples like you said. So just some food for thought.
I would say I know that we definitely want to offer some training to classroom teachers to ensure a little bit more consistent response from people in terms of their understanding of the checklist and so on. I think we also need to offer some education to the parents, to the community at large about exactly what the gifted workshop program is all about, why we're offering it, what we're trying to do to serve those students.
Thank you. I think that's important because we do see some disparities from schools, like drastic disparities. And it makes me think like some schools know the process a little better maybe than other schools. And I would hope to try to equalize it a bit because typically it's a percentage of students across all schools should be fairly similar. Shouldn't have one school with 20 kids, another school with 3.
This goes to Ian's point about the quantitative indicator as well as looking at other things. We know that there's ways to get to a score sometimes that are beneficial that can also fluctuate our numbers.
Thank you.
I'll say one thing about getting second grades and observing the children. And it's very hard when you're only in a school one day every 6 days, but then being in a school where kids are bused to us, I don't know how I will have eyes or presence in other schools if I'm in just one.
So we have some work to do with calibration, which is across our 11 buildings and our middle as well in terms of how second and first grade and all teachers look at the identifiers that we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah, so just piggybacking on Mr. Rinaldi's, comment about, you know, how do these kids get here, right? How do we find them? And so I'm thinking about how are we capturing, and maybe we're not, the sort of talented kids, right? So kids that have these extraordinary gifts with music, with dance, you know, they're just eons ahead of everyone, and they might be very much individuals where this program would suit their needs, where they could apply their gifts to these projects. And they might not have met the testing criteria, right? Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. So how do they make their way? What's their entry point into this program? Are we serving them or are we not serving them?
We don't have a creative arts talented program, if that's what you're asking. We don't. have
I'm
a
not
test
asking
for it.
that. I'm talking about this program that clearly might be able to serve people with extraordinary gifts that might be in the creative arts, but would benefit from this program. So not a specialized program for them, but using their talents. This
If I could, I do think that, the phenomenon task that we're talking about, designing and offering to students, what we've gone through. So the testing and looking at the scores, and we say, okay, this is a great pool of students. Now let's see, how they do on a phenomenon task would allow students to tap into all of their various talents. I remember reading an example last year of a student who, I don't know, created a television and was putting on a television show like every day in a box. And, you know, it was a very creative expression of what the student was trying to do. So I think that having those tasks will allow those kids to sort of reveal talents they have, and that'll just be another aspect of the consideration for identifying students.
I think, I'm sorry, a little bit to what some of these students also have. We are still looking for those above average students because they will be missing their academics.
Oh, sure.
Even if they are creative thinkers or, you know, they're great ballet.
It's a considerable amount of.
Oh, I understand that. And I mean, like right now, the cutoff is like, let's say it's the top 1%, right? So if they're in the top 3%, just as an example, but they're exceptional in some way that doesn't produce itself through the testing, those are the students that I've always been interested in, right? Because I think that they could and would benefit from this program. And the program, frankly, I think would benefit from them. So mutually. So anyway, that's a group I'm interested in.
When we were at the national conference and even before, like, seems to be the hot topic for everyone across the nation. How are we addressing talent? It's really complex. Like no one has figured it quite out yet because there's just so much to it.
I do think our district offers so many opportunities. We always get that award for music education here, right? I mean, I think we have a really robust program for talented kids. I also think something that helps me to think about gifted programming is the idea of who would benefit versus who needs it. And I think we're really trying to find the kids who really need this programming because many kids would benefit, but might struggle with missing so much time in class. And that then becomes a social emotional problem for them too, when they're feeling stressed about all this time they're missing in class to go to gifted programming. So it's a tough balance, but I do think thinking about it as a need versus them benefiting from it is kind of an important way to delineate the group.
Ms. Flynn?
This is a quick one. You spoke about the FTE implications and the transportation. Are there any resource implications? I see in some of the question are field trips. Are you guys utilizing any kind of text or looking into something like that? Or are you fully creating this curriculum within your department?
Some texts that are included in the resource documents. For example, there's a book about managing your intensities that Anne wants to use with middle school kids. They use some of the resources like Birdseed TV. Yeah, so there's different resources like that, but no textbook per se, and not a really heavy cost on resources.
Dr. Kelly.
Yeah, thank you for this. I'll admit that the presentation has made me more concerned than I was coming in. There were some things I didn't understand about it. And again, I recall the details of the August presentation. And then this seemed quite different from that. So I didn't realize the degree to which some of those qualities, in fact, have remained. So my first question is that our approval of this budget or not approval, of this curriculum, how much of that is budget organizational dependent? Because we're approving a curriculum, but if in fact the implementation of the curriculum is entirely dependent on a budget factor and we have none of that data in this presentation, I'm concerned.
Can I?
Well, let me just say, before you jump in.
Yes.
There would be other considerations if it were not. So currently, 4th and 5th grade are combined groups with our current FTE structure. And the way the program's laid out. So if we were to say, we're gonna approve this curriculum and have the 2 elementary teachers continue working across 6 buildings, they run out of time. So it would have to be on a greater scale than 6 days. We also only service 3rd grade from about January on, not September on, so that is dependent as well. The way it is structured with this presentation is dependent on moving kids across the district.
So therefore, we need that piece of this information before we can vote on this curriculum. Or excuse me, I would need that piece of that information before I could vote on this curriculum because
The transportation.
how is this being operationalized? I mean, it wasn't, again, I read the answers to the questions, but the degree to which, I guess I missed it because I didn't see it in a very neat chart, just how much time they're missing out of school and out of their classes. This is sounding up to a far greater level than I had realized. And so I would be interested in all of that. And I don't know if there's anything else to say, otherwise I can move on to my other questions.
See what James said. So.
And I do, Ms. Farrell, do appreciate your point because that was one of the things I'd written down of, it's one thing to be an out-of-the-box thinker, but does that mean you can afford to miss math? And I found that a little bit concerning. And I couldn't agree with Mrs. Guernsey more that I think the swath, forget the top 3%, I think you could really look at a wide swath and there's so much of this that would be beneficial to students. But they got to learn their fractions. And there's a lot of content that they will be missing. And that brings me back to my first question of being very concerned with just what is being missed. Who are we capturing in this and how are we catching them up on straight up content? I'm a little less concerned about the skills given who I perceive to be the target population, but the content I worry about. Also, I'll go to that one later. I was curious about, because one of the things I found really helpful in the English language arts curriculum, but I can't remember exactly where it was found, was that across disciplinary units, it was really helpful that there had been in there, and I remember this especially with the elementary school, that we actually put in the document which social study or which science unit was being captured with some of the nonfiction reading in the ELA curriculum. And I was trying to do that work of, hold on, of the comparison of seeing, grade 4 Antarctica, was that trying to match in with the Earth systems of the Unit 1 science curriculum? I didn't know, but nor could I tell from the document. And I just think that would speak well of the curriculum. I believe you, I just didn't see it.
And we don't necessarily, we're not trying to jump into the regular curriculum. We're trying to do something separate than the regular classroom curriculum.
But the comment was made as part of the presentation that this is interdisciplinary so you're talking about in the gifted entirely separate, not interdisciplinary with the grade level curriculum. Okay, so then that means that is content outright missed, never made up.
Yes. I know this.
Actually,
Yeah, so one of the things about gifted learners is they have asynchronous development. It's one of their characteristics. So I'll say it again, you know where I stand on content and skills there. With that,
Which I find very assuring, by the way, in this conversation.
With that being said, many times gifted learners are asynchronous, meaning age is one thing in terms of emotionality, but intellectual is beyond where they might be. So, I could have any of these gifted teachers talk about catch up, but many times they don't need to be caught up. So I don't know if any of you want to talk about what these characteristics look like for students who are in the program. And do they need to go back and catch up on content that they've missed during the class?
we typically, and I just jump in real quick. We typically don't have an issue. And if there is an issue with a classroom teacher and a student missing, It is just a quick conversation. If a student needs to stay in the classroom at that time, then they do, and then they can come back out. If that's,
How is that gonna work if you're busing them to other buildings?
that's a great question.
Well, they wouldn't go if they had to catch up on it.
Right ahead of time.
They would just have to stay behind.
But communication.
Have to be flexible. I mean, it sounds from the teachers, that's a rarity that they're falling behind in any particular area.
I think too, it goes to what Ms. Farrell said. It's like the students that need it, like
I
they.
understand, but that can be on a unit by unit basis. That can be dependent on the subject of that part of the cycle. That's my worry.
We're catching the right kids, and it applies to the.
Yeah,
whole-
across the gambit.
Okay, couple of other questions I had, regarding the elementary school versus the middle school. The elementary school, I really enjoyed reading the units, because quite frankly, I found them very content heavy in a delightful way. I did not react as well to the middle school units. I'm just being very frank with you. I found the redundancy of unit 1 to not be of the greatest value, but again, I fully acknowledge, maybe I'm not seeing it, that having that self-awareness revisited for 3 years
Really.
is, and so I'm open to that.
Point in their life, think about teenage middle school kids, how different they are from elementary school and trying to understand themselves.
But isn't that something that the entire middle school is doing? Like, I absolutely saw the value, but especially because of the middle school age, but as part of the gifted and talented program, that's what I didn't see. Like, what middle schooler doesn't need to have a degree of greater self-awareness, et cetera? Why is this part of the gifted and talented program?
Gifted learners are different than other learners. So they have, and we find these gifted kids have what we call overexcitabilities, intensities that throw them into whirlwinds sometimes. And so we're talking to them at a different level. That's what Julie was mentioning in the book. That's called Managing Your Intensities for Learning and Relationships. It's really meant for teenagers and adults. Like we handle that. So they do need, this needs to be revisited every year. And as the kid grows up, they're, like Tanya had mentioned, they're facing different challenges. So it's really important for those kids.
Okay, I appreciate hearing that. And then the unit 3, and again, read it as unit 3, that is the personal choice one. That's the take the deep dive on an area of interest. Which, having just heard the whole technology reaction from many parents, aren't they doing that on their own already? Why do we need to have a unit where we supervise them taking a deep dive on an area of interest, which they're already doing on their own after school, probably too late at night sometimes? I'm looking to be sold on that as a unit that we repeat for 3 years.
I wish you could have sat at the national conference with me, because there are some districts in Virginia, which is they're great with gifted programming. I mean, they're at the top notch. They spend the entire year on independent, steady passion projects. They truly believe in it. The kids carry it throughout the whole year. I mean, they spend way more time than we do. It's really, I wish I could have some of my high schoolers come back and talk to you about how much of an impact that was for them to take something they did. And even if it was a project that, they didn't follow through in high school, I got a student study economics. He didn't go on to study economics, but when I visited him in college recently, he said to me, that was one of the most impactful projects I did, just going through the stages of that project and learning about myself and what I wanted to do in life. They really enjoy doing that. And it gives them all an opportunity to follow something they're truly interested in, because all of them have some of them are doing things with technology. Some of them are doing, want to write. Some of them, I don't know what some of the other ideas, I can't even think. They're,
But I'm also thinking of Julie and his type 1, 2, and 3
Oh, right.
the levels of how far you go with your independent project. When you're at a type 3, you are calling senators and discussing your topic with them, and so it could be a topic that you did in 6th grade, 7th grade, and now in 8th grade, you're taking the deepest dive on it, and you're making, you're finding primary sources, and you're going out, you're not marching on Washington, but you're definitely taking your passion to a place you know, you're shutting down animal shelters, or you're going into places where kids have taken that deep dive out into the community and they've gone further. And that's what Joe Renzilli talks about, all your different levels. Sometimes in sixth grade, it's a type 1, you know, surface level interest, but it gets deeper as it goes on.
And what's the role of the teacher in that unit?
We're guiding them through, we're teaching them how to write proposals. Well, we're teaching them to brainstorm their ideas, write proposals. I even call in other adults into the room and they have to pitch their proposal. So it's kind of like an interview, and then they have to formulate a plan. And I just want to mention, we had a 5th grader who's in college now, but I remember she had done something, followed her plan. She created a product, but by the time she got to middle school, she was creating the business plan, and she patented it in high school. It was on national TV. That's one of our own Fairfield kids. Like, it's something she followed right through. We also have a current 7th grader who did a pitching machine back in elementary school. You know what I'm talking about? And she just went into the national conference. She's right now a 7th grader. So they some of them will follow their project through. Some of them will change their project idea because they want to explore something different. So it's really an exciting project. And like I mentioned, some gifted programs, they just do just this.
No other curriculum.
No other curriculum.
I wouldn't be in favor of that. Right now, for example, like the fact that you do the public speaking as a component in each of the 3 middle schools, I think is fabulous. And I will say that that's exactly where I find this very valuable. Hearing those specifics is very helpful. So thank you, because that's what I was trying to envision when I was reading it. And I was just picturing, you know, going down the gopher hole of clicking on links and reading, and that was not what that's what I was picturing them doing on their own time. So this was very helpful. So thank you so much for that.
I think the young man that was here last year, I don't remember his name. He spoke here, and then he was like the state representative for.
Yes.
Also a gifted student.
Take credit. All right, thank you. So then just a couple of other questions. I was wondering to what degree this has been run past current parents and what their reactions were, or were you relying on this presentation as the mechanism to reach parents?
It's currently out with the public, broadly speaking, not just the gifted parents, seeking feedback, and I will have it in the packet for the vote. It's still open. We had about 10 comments up until today on it, and more are coming in each day. It seems we're getting 1 or 2.
So, and they're commenting on the link to the curriculum documents, or, okay.
And it says that the presentation was tonight, if they wanted to watch it, then they get all the curriculum documents as well.
Thank you. And then I just had one other comment. I noticed that in the grade 3, unit 2, a pitch to a Board of Ed member. I hope part of that comes, you actually issue an invite to the Board of Ed. Maybe they can get one to dreams if they're free during the day, but I thought that sounded kind of cool. So, oh, I can't, but somebody else hopefully. But thank you so much.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. This was very comprehensive. And Mr. Testani, when can we expect this back?
After the new year.
After the new year?
Yes.
Somewhere during budget season or after budget season?
During budget season, because obviously there are implications, as we know, on the budget that we need to know sooner than later.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Pearson, as a follow-up to that, when would we have the information that, again, I'm the one who expressed interest. I don't know if other board members are interested in hearing it, because I imagine there's some time associated with that. But when would we get that information?
I'll plan on getting it on Friday's packet, but just to make sure you want cost.
What is this changing in terms of the FTE, the organization, the class time missed, and the money?
I missed, that's what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to move on to item 6, consent calendar. Dickinson, did you have a question as to?
Yeah, I just had a point of clarification, if you don't mind. So at the last meeting, we amended our bylaws to insert number 6, which we see here, and then renumber accordingly the rest of our agenda items in the bylaws. So I was a little surprised to see the minutes since that became a new number 9. Just for the record, for the public, and for your also, Mr. Peterson, the new one hasn't been posted yet. So The old one is still up. This, I might not understand, if they're looking it up, they might not understand what I'm saying, but I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't posted yet. So anyway, approval of minutes still remains on there as a number 9. So I see there's a bit of a conflict, or at least I'm just confused.
I'm not entirely sure what you mean by number 9. Number 9.
So in our bylaw now, approval of
Yes.
minutes sits at a new number 9 from the previous number 8.
I understand what you're saying. Bylaw isn't specific as to order. I think if there's a very useful order that we've learned through experience, that order works well. I would imagine that in a case where we think that the minutes either don't belong in the consent calendar or there's no other items to put in the consent calendar, that it will continue to fall in that position. My thought was it can be included. They're often non-controversial and don't require public comment, kind of tailor-made for this. I mean, I can explore other wordings for the bylaw if it bothers you. I'm kind of thinking that this is as a first run, we'll see how it goes. And
Yeah, just the first time we're doing it, so I just wanted to raise it now.
I understand.
Get clarification, because it seems to be, to me, just my interpretation, which may be different than your interpretation, is that minute should be number 9. But you know what I'm saying, like, based on what's actually in the bylaw still. So
I understand.
I just wanted to have the conversation and get it up front.
Well, let me ask this question. Do you have an objection to these items being considered within the consent? Because you can do that and we will consider them.
Fine. If I make an objection, then we got to go through approving all of these one by one. But I mean, I'm just going forward. I wanted to have the conversation, and it's just the minutes too. Like it's easy enough maybe when there's one set, but sometimes there could be 2, 3 different sets. And then tonight we got revised minutes at very late in the day, and sometimes there's an amendment or whatever. So I personally just feel like it just keeps it clean to keep it at number 9, but that's just my personal on it.
If I may, let me entertain a motion to approve the items listed under the agenda's consent calendar. Moved by Nikesa, seconded by Mr. Lee. I'm
Sorry
open.
that we discussed that before you moved.
No, it was a point of order, so I wanted to bring that. I
Well,
thought
I
that was
wanted
appropriate.
to raise, so,
I know Ms. Flynn wants to talk about the minutes.
Yeah, I'm happy to follow up as well. So,
Sorry, did you say a motion then? Is there a motion?
I made a motion to approve the items listed under the agenda's consent calendar, which was moved by Nikesa and seconded by Mr. Lee.
So I'm happy to maybe fill in a little bit of the gap. I was alerted by another board member, Ms. Maxon Kennelly, about 2, what I would kind of label as small errors. One was a spelling correction and one was a tally vote. If anyone watched last meeting, there were several members not present. There were several members online. Watch on FairTV, you can't see the hands. So there was some tally, and I appreciate the correction. I did voice Mr. Peterson that as a reaction to that, as a secretary, I did have concerns about the minutes being in the consent calendar. He assured me that we could remove it, but we were able to revise the minutes for the board and the public prior to the meeting. I think this is something that we'll continue to watch, but I do have concerns about being in the consent calendar, but I am amenable to moving along tonight and seeing how it moves in the forward, depending on how many minutes we have, what the minutes look like. In January could look a little bit different. So I appreciate Mr. Peterson's amenity to that.
Are there any other comments on the other items in the consent calendar or the minutes themselves? We have approval of several policies that we had first reads of last meeting.
Peterson.
Yes, Mr. Jacob.
So on number E, do we need to change number E to approval of revised 11/26/24 regular meeting minutes and make an amendment since it's not per the backup? Do you know what I'm saying? Because
I don't believe so, because the backup was.
No, well, it's not like there was a motion that was before us in the beginning. The only motion before us now is the minutes that we have here.
All right, thank you.
Any comments, or
I received no questions.
do members of the public have any comment on the policy issues listed under the consent calendar? All right, then going back to the board, all in favor? The vote is unanimous. Thank you, and hopefully this will get less clunky as we go forward. Old business. Recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the grade 6-12 library media curriculum and textbooks. Can I have a motion? Mr. Rinaldi, seconded by Mr. Lee. Mr. Testani, you want to address, we did drop the K-5 off of this for this meeting.
Yeah, so after some concerns that were raised from the public, and as we heard this evening from parents who came up to speak during public comment, we decided to separate the two. So what you have before you tonight is grade 6 through 12 only. But before, we'd like also a little bit of feedback from the board as to what to do next in terms of K-5. Since we're not bringing it forward, seems like there is some willingness or want to make adjustments to it. The department would need some guidance on that from what the board would like to see in regards to any changes, because I know they worked extremely hard, as you're all aware. You know, I've heard commentary that it's an extraordinary document. It is a lot. There's, you know, together it's over 500 pages of curriculum documents. But if there are going to be any suggestions from the board, because I'm not just going to send back what we have now, K-5, without any direction to the department in terms of where to go, because obviously this is what they think is what the document should read. And if there's going to be a recommendation for any changes, we'd like to be clear and explicit to them what those changes would be, so that they can reevaluate and do that work before bringing it forth to the board after the new year.
Just a clarification, because we don't actually have a discussion of K-5 on the agenda tonight. How would you like to receive this? Would you like to make this an agenda item at a future meeting? Would you like to receive things directly from board members?
We could create a Google Doc, and if board members want to do that, we can do that. If not, we can bring it forth as a discussion item at the next board meeting.
We already have a Google Doc on this that we were asked to fill out before, so instead of creating a new one, I might suggest that's the way you're gonna do it, so that the original comments, like I put my comments on, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So some of us already provided some of that input, and if we were gonna discuss it.
Reactivate that.
I mean, I kind of feel like it would be unfair to wait too long to give some initial feedback to January, only because I know it's not on the agenda per se. Maybe we could put it under superintendent's report or something, just to kind of get some initial feedback, because we're going to be all the way into January, and that holds everything up for several weeks. So if there is commentary available or space on here where we could provide what Mr. Testani is, at least a high level before the Google Doc goes out, I would hope that would be helpful, but whatever you want to do.
Max account?
Well, to further complicate things, while I definitely hear Mrs. Jacobson's point, in policy, we are preparing to look at 2 of the district policies regarding tech use. And one of the things I was concerned about was if the policy committee started to go down a road where we are going to support direction to staff, which then makes, I mean, again, and we have not discussed it at all, so there's nothing I'm holding back on this. But what if we started to pursue policy, which made the pursuit of certain curriculum impossible because we were looking to move the district in a different direction? And so, you know, it makes me almost wish we had another December meeting, because I hear the point that time is going to get away from us. But this, well, I was going to bring it up later during the committee reports, but one of the things I had been considering coming to Mr. Peterson and requesting as an agenda item is discussion of that, because I think the 3 of us in policy, we will certainly, you know, do our best, putting our best foot forward, but just think this will make class size look like nothing. You know, that one, the policy committee needed to bring that to the full board to get direction, because the 3 of us were doing the best that we could to represent our perspectives, but we needed 9 people's feedback. And I'm kind of thinking we might need the same for technology, because again, what a shame if we started to pursue a direction that then ran counter to an approved curriculum. And I'm not saying I have the answer, because I just get to operate in my policy bubble. So I'm not saying that I know the best path forward, but I know I was going to bring up today that I'm looking to do this relatively soon, because it could have budget implications. It absolutely has curriculum, and all these 3 things have to be talking to each other.
Yeah, my only question would be in policy. Can't really think of a way that the policy would impact curriculum in terms of how it would be taught within the library media curriculum. Just, I mean, if we ban cell phones in schools, for example, I don't think that has any impact on
Agreed.
the implementation of the curriculum. I also think we received several emails. I'm sure you may have received more than I did. I wasn't included on all of them. There was nothing really specific in terms of what in the curriculum specifically was counter to, number one, what we do now, or what we're trying to teach kids. But I think the library media specialists do an incredible job trying to teach responsible use of technology, appropriate use of technology. And I think they want to continue to do that in a way that kids understand, have a respect and responsibility on how to utilize technology. So I don't think that's changed. If anything, it may have been enhanced. So there was nothing specific. It really circled around devices, which unfortunately, starting in third grade, they do need to be exposed to how to utilize a Chromebook because state testing is done on a Chromebook. And, you know, I was going to get into this more, a little bit of commentary, but the floor is open now in terms of everything that was said during public comment, which I do support. We've had this conversation through panel discussion, also at the PTAC meeting earlier in the year. But I think this is a partnership that we have to really understand that this doesn't fall solely on public education institutions to try to fix the technology issue. Over 4 hours a day are spent on social media by the average teenager. That's not happening in school. That happens at home. That happens in the evening. The addiction to gaming happens at home. It happens in the evening. It happens much of the time. I think our children are sleeping because we're asleep and they're hearing pings and notifications and everything else, checking their phone, getting up early in the morning to make sure there's likes and dislikes on their posts and everything else. So I just want to caution that whatever we do as a board, in terms of banning cell phone use during the school day, that's great. That's not going to solve the problem. It's going to be part of solving the problem. There's a bigger problem that exists. The book is great if you haven't read it, and he will talk a lot about this in the book, that this is not happening only during the school day. You know, I walked through the halls of both of our high schools and middle schools throughout the day. It is not, I picture one day at Ward High School during passing time, I must have walked by 300 kids. If there was 2 cell phones out, I would say that was a lot. So I think the kids understand within the school walls, there are dummy phones. I got it. If we get yonder bags, they're going to put a dummy phone in the yonder bag. And so let's remember, everything we do, we're not going to get it's not a catch-all. So that being said, I want to know specifically, so I can go back to our library media folks, what people are looking for explicitly, because I don't know if there's anything in the document that has been spoken about tonight that gives them any direction as to what in the documents parents don't support or the board doesn't support.
I think we'll have a leadership meeting next week. I think we can discuss format in there too. Between now and then, I think reopening the Google.
We'll reopen the Google form.
It would be very helpful just to get things rolling. Yeah, I don't want to get too far down the discussion of K-5 and tech policy.
We got this.
We will need to deal with those going forward, and I don't think anyone thinks we're going to dodge those. Ms. Gersing?
I would like to speak to 6 through 12.
I think it's time to speak to 6 through 12. Thank you.
So grateful for this extraordinary work. And I would add to that, beyond just my excitement about the curriculum and the thoughtfulness that was put into it, I would say, if we're talking about digital citizenship, if it belongs anywhere, it is with our library media specialists. They are our experts. So, for 6 through 12, I will be enthusiastically supporting this. And in terms of feedback for K through 5, take that another time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lee?
I have a quick question. The lane, to go back real quick, the lane that the K through 5, because this is a curriculum, they're ready to move forward. Where does that put that department delaying it? Like, what are the kids missing? What are we missing out? What are we holding
This
back?
is all for implementation next year, but I mean, whether you approve it, say tonight, nothing's happening in the next couple of weeks, but we do want to get back to work after the new year if there's needs to be any edits, because there's only so much time the department has to work on this without pulling them out of class and working on it during the school day. So, I mean, next week is the final week before a long break. Things gonna happen, but we need to get them back to work on it when we get back in January so that we can bring it forth to the board for approval. At least by the end of January, at the latest.
Because I looking at all the curriculum, unless I'm mistaken, didn't mention anything about cell phone usage at all, and I could be mistaken, right? It didn't mention anything cell phone, all specifically technology, what they're gonna learn and this and that. I personally, I think the K through 5 should have been voted on tonight, because what, I understand what the public's saying, but what they were requesting and what's actually the curriculum, it's not apples to apples.
Mr. Krasnoff.
I just wanted to also reiterate what Ms. Guernsey was saying about all the work that they put in. This was a massive document with a lot of really good detail. Over the last 2 weeks, I've really been sitting back and trying to figure out where technology fit in our schools, just because of all the emails we've been getting. We need a computer science class, and honestly, this is the only place it fits. I've been looking to see if there's any way to go back to the way it probably was where a lot of us went to school, where there was computer science and there was library, and library was, you went and used a card catalog, which I'm sure none of our kids are gonna ever use. But in addition to that, we got to read new stories and learn about new authors. And in general, I would have loved to see it broken out like that, but I don't know if that's realistic. We just don't have enough time in the day. So for me, what they did present, I was very happy with.
And just to comment on that, I think what you just said, cat's been let out of the bag. We're not going back to 1985. I mean, as much as people have nostalgia about when they were in school, this is a curriculum that's moving forward and having to teach kids to operate within a world, not just today, but 10 years from now. You know, and like it or not, the world is changing. I heard a comment earlier about AI. It's not going anywhere. So we need to prepare our kids to be responsible and respectful of technology so that it can be utilized in a proper manner. So again, we just need to know explicitly if there's going to be changes, give them some direction, because if not, the document's going to come forth as is.
I'd like to offer that in 1985, I'm pretty sure the Ward Library had a Mac that I. Ms. Jacobson.
To follow up to Mr. Lee's point, I think that parents made some, and I don't want to speak for anybody about the cell phones, and that's what you honed in on, but there was a broader conversation going back to Mrs. Maxon Ellie about our vision, our policy. And I think it's a fair question to raise, because when Dr. Jones implemented this, 2018, 17. It really was around the state testing. And there were a lot of questions on that time. Tell me exactly how much screen time kids are going to have in first grade. Couldn't answer that question. We'll get back to you. What are the standards that we're going to employ about its usage in a classroom? Never got that. So I think that there is some thoughtful work that we can be doing around our philosophy and policies around this. Obviously, I hear what Mr. Testani is saying too in the world that we live in today. And fair enough, there wasn't really any public comment on page 465, subtract standard 2.4, right? We did not get feedback from parents on the actual curriculum document. What we heard about is philosophy, vision, purpose, mission. And I agree that we don't have that. So I'm looking forward to those discussions. And I'm happy to just give some insight in that I do have concern around the K-5 in terms of how much technology was embedded in our earliest grades. So K-1, 2 particularly. So versus just falling in love more with that traditional library aspect. So just to give you some initial insight on that.
That's good.
You know, and you know what, advocacy, we hear this a lot, like, okay, come third grade, SBAC's on a computer, so now we have to teach them all of these skills, taking up time in the classroom. Well, we can advocate to the state to go back to a paper test. I mean, there can be advocacy around these things, and they are looking at the state actually. They are actually looking at the state assessment. So that was passed in the last session. So there are opportunities about how that trickles down, or even partial or a hybrid program, whatever it may be. But I just don't think we wholesale say, well, because they need to know how to scroll and drag click in third grade, that 4.5-year-olds necessarily need to spend their library time. Or 50% of it, because I did ask that question at the last meeting. Not saying zero and all of that. I'm just looking for the broader conversation about what really is our vision.
I would say at this point, like, I think hearing members of the board comment, hearing the superintendent comment, hearing the public comment, this is a conversation that's long overdue, and I would like to give it its full due, which unfortunately is not tonight. I don't know that we're going to, I think we will all agree that this conversation needs to be had both in policy and kind of in broader terms with staff, with the superintendent. But I would like to move on to the 612 because that's the actual thing on the agenda. Are there any more comments on the approval of the 612 library media curriculum? Seeing none, out to the public. Any comments from the public? Back to the board. Any last words? All right, all in favor? It's 9-0. Thank you. Move on to item 7B, approval of world language textbooks with the recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the world language textbook. Can I have a motion, please? Mr. Lee, seconded by Ms. Reynolds. Any more commentary from Mr. Zavajancic or?
I think they know of, at least Mrs. Guernsey came and viewed the textbooks yesterday. And they were available for anyone else to view, so.
Yeah, so just 2 comments. Did you get any with the limited, I know we got a memo that included the feedback, right? Of anyone who came to look at it. There was just the 1 comment.
Yeah.
So nothing beyond that. Because I thought there were a couple of people who had appointments to come and view the textbooks.
There were 3 that asked for an appointment and I responded to confirm and I got a response back last week. So I'm waiting. If they come, I will open it back up. I have nothing to share about that at this point.
Okay, so the only other thing is I just wanted to reiterate, only because you weren't here, Mr. Testani, is that my earnest plea that if we move these textbooks forward and we therefore are going to have the accompanying budget investment in these textbooks, that I am hoping that we can follow up on my request to get the non-Spanish and French teachers to get a chance to speak to middle school and recruit.
I sent an email out this morning after reading your email this first thing. I woke up this morning and we're working on making those arrangements so that those opportunities are done in person.
Thank you.
Mrs. Guernsey.
So I'm happy to speak about my experience with resources. I spent some time with them. This is not my subject area of expertise. I thought some of them were really actually pretty phenomenal. Where I'm kind of having difficulty with this is that when we use the word resource, what does that mean? So it used to be that we would buy the sets of textbooks, they would go home with the students. And that's what we were paying for, this tangible item, right? So today, when we talk about textbooks, in some cases, for some languages like Latin, for example, and Mandarin, they're getting these textbooks, individual students are receiving them and they're taking them home and they're using them during the classroom. They have supplementary digital resources. But what's different about some of the languages, like with Spanish and French, the textbooks exist and they can use them in the classroom. There's a classroom set, and I mean, anybody could jump in if I'm not capturing this correctly, but from my understanding, so a teacher teaches level 3 Spanish. They have the set of textbooks they could use in the classroom, but in fact, what we're paying for really is, in my interpretation, the digital resource, right? So that gets me thinking about how our students interacting with the digital resource. And then this goes to the conversation that we're going to be having in policy and later about with the library media K through 5 is, how do I feel about students using their Chromebooks, that specific piece of equipment, which I believe frankly is inferior. I would not use one myself to do my professional work. So how do we feel about the time that students are spending on these smaller screens? How are they scrolling through these digital interfaces that we're purchasing? I just have a lot of questions around that. So that's not going to prevent me from supporting or not supporting this, but it's part of this conversation about how we're using our digital resources. And we're using them now, so it's not that we're doing something totally different. And it's super important, like the ed puzzles that kids are using where they're hearing Spanish speakers. Well, that's what they're using now. So they're hearing Spanish speaker, they're using Spanish speaker from, all over the world. So they're getting these different dialects, whatever. Like I get that. But it's a conversation we haven't had, right? Like, what are we purchasing? And when we talk about this outlay of, $600,000+, that's for, it's the digital resource. So we can't let that expire. I mean, because we don't have the book. So what is the total amount of money that we're spending over 10 years? It's going to be a lot more than 600,000. So I'm actually not going to be supporting this today, but for a different reason, which I've spoken about at this board table and I've spoken about in leadership. And it's not because I don't support the resources, it's because I want to see them with the curriculum like we've done in the past. So at this point in time, it just doesn't make sense to me. And again, I thought the books look great. I would be happy for them to continue with their progress towards curriculum writing with those books. It's just with the budget season where it is, relative to where we are today, there are too many unknowns and I'm just not willing to support it. So.
Any other comments or questions?
Can I ask a follow-up? I just have a question. Just a couple. Thank you. Hi. This is about the, I know the resources are what's on here, but my question is around the areas that don't have the resource. And I know that you're writing the curriculum. So again, this was one of the things I did put a few comments on the Google sheet that we're supposed to do to give like board input before we start down these roads. And one of them for me was a thoughtful approach to what we're doing in K-5. I have a couple questions around that because I asked that at the last meeting and there are no resources for that. So my first question is for the new world language standards that are in draft form on the State Department of Education website. I don't want to presume. It's pretty clear where they're going with this, and it really is about cultures and it is about communications and connections and the broader world and language and all of that, right? And they have the standards there. And it does say that we are supposed to ensure pre-K-12 have access to world language. So can you just speak to a minute about how what we're doing here is going to align to what they're doing in terms of what we're going to be expected to implement as a board?
From the state standards.
Yeah.
So the state standards are based off of the national standards, which are long-standing. Those are the ACTFL standards, ACTFL, American Council for Teachers of Foreign Language. Those have been in place since I was a world language teacher in the early 2000s. They're the 5 C's. So you mentioned a few of them in terms of where they're going. It is also where we've been. Cultures, communications, comparisons. The curriculum is being written with them. What the state has done though, which is interesting, is I assume you looked at them. There's now charts of proficiency within the communication realm. And as I said at the last presentation a few weeks ago, we are still working towards, you may remember the inverted triangle. We're still working towards a proficiency standard, but to get there, you have to learn language skills as well. So we are moving in alignment with the state. I know they're draft standards, but nonetheless, we assume they'll be voted on and approved because they are also the national standards with that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Because just want to get that on record before you're going down the road of writing all these, which I'm sure will be a lengthy other set of documents. But for me, what I'm struggling with is all of the areas that don't have any resources, but yet on the other hand, we need them to write this curriculum. So like ASL doesn't have a resource. Elementary is not having any resource. So I'm having a hard time approving this, feeling that it's somewhat disjointed right now for me in terms of how this is all working across the spectrum. So I just wanted to share that, and I was disappointed that I feel like you guys did a lot of work. No, I know everyone has done work and everyone's thinking really hard, and you were delayed a little bit for different reasons and whatnot. But I feel like I just didn't get a really thoughtful presentation on why we were not looking at pre-K 2, which is, we know, the best time to learn, you know, or one of the best times. And even just what 3-5. So I just kind of feel like that was like, I ignored a little bit in what we got. So just wanted to share some of my challenges right now. And then I did put that in sheet, how I was really looking at how are we better thinking about K-5, right? So just wanted to provide some of that feedback, but I appreciate the clarification. And it's good to know that you're looking at that so that we don't approve something or the board approves it. Or spending time, significant time, building something that's not going to be the vision of what we're expected to do because it's in draft form, so.
The resources are aligned to ACTFL standards within there, just to confirm that. 3-5 generally doesn't have a resource. What they do is very communicative and proficiency oriented. I've seen what they've been working on till this point, the 5 teachers who work in the 11 elementary schools. And how that's going to connect to a middle school when it becomes a little more formal. So is a resource necessary? They meet twice every 6 days for 30 minutes. I forget what the minute value is there, but it's easier to plan out a scope and sequence, especially knowing what a level 1 language class looks like, even if you like Italian 1. A lot of the skills and content that they're learning in the first units in high school of those languages are happening in our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade as well. So there is a basis they're working off of. They're not just, picking random things. But we also have to have vertical alignment across levels, which we didn't have. And when I say that, elementary, middle, and high, so that we could be assured when they get to Spanish 4 or French 4, everybody comes with something that is with there. I know you don't disagree with that, but it's very difficult to do without some sort of resource with a scope and sequence that's been laid out and carefully thought out. Because we get into debates about things that aren't helpful. People have thought about these things. Curriculum writers have thought about these things, like where certain topics should go, where certain language structures should go, how they build upon each other. That's truthfully a full-time job.
Understand. Yeah. And can you speak a little bit to ASL?
Sure. So ASL is not resourceless. It simply has a teacher resource, which doesn't meet the textbook policy, which is why it didn't come before you. So they are working off of a document and a teacher resource in terms of scope and sequence across their levels. And there's not a textbook resource to with it.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Krasnov.
I am going to support this, especially seeing the passion for the textbooks that all of our language specialists had. I do wish there was a little bit of K2 integration. It's on a very simple, basic level of counting and colored stuff. I think it would be good at some point to look at it.
I saw your comment. I think you put that in the spreadsheet. The issue with doing that is that you need a certified teacher to do it. So, having when I say certified, world language certified, having, for example, an elementary teacher giving them the materials and saying, teach this, I'm not sure would help versus having somebody certified and who knows that language isn't able to teach it. So I did recognize that comment.
Is there a possibility to bring in some of the world language teachers as like a guest every once in a while to do this?
Their schedule's really tight. So there's 5 of them across 11 buildings. I know there's principals in the audience. The way they schedule them is they say like, I'll take the teacher on A, B, and C day, you take them on E and F, and that's when Spanish happens in the day. and they're really book. So the other 3 grades would essentially be a 5.0 FTE if you did it. In the
I'd
same.
be willing to look at that personally, but I can't speak for us.
Understood.
Any other questions or comments about the textbook issue? I'll take it out to the public. Public comment? Coming back to the board, I will remind the board that according to state statute, a change in textbook requires a vote of 2/3 of the members of the board. So 6 will be needed to pass in this case. All in favor? Mr. Krasno, Mr. Lee, Mr. Peterson, Ms. Maxon-Kennelly, Mr. Asa, Ms. Rinaldi. All opposed? Ms. Jacobson, Ms. Flynn, Ms. Guernsey. Motion passes 6-3. Thank you very much. Next item, new business. Item 8A, approval of Fairfield School Administrators Association contract. This motion I will read. The Fairfield Board of move that the Fairfield Board of Education hereby moves to provide funding for and approve the collective bargaining agreement between the Fairfield Board of Education and the Fairfield School Administrators Association for the period July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2028. The Board of Education further moves to delegate to the board chair the authority to execute the final contract document on behalf of the board. Moved by Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly, seconded by Mr. Asa. This is not something we normally take comment on or discussed it previously executive session, so I'll just take a vote. All in favor? It's a 9-0 vote. Thank you very much. We'll move on to new business 8D, approval of policy 4118.112, Title IX, prohibition of sex discrimination, sexual harassment, with the recommended motion that the Board of Education through policy 4118.112, Title IX, prohibition of sex discrimination and sexual harassment in the workplace. Moved by Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly, seconded by Mr. Asa. Ms. Maxon-Kennelly.
Yeah, so as I had told the board, given the board the heads up that we were looking to do this as a one and done to get where we needed to be. It is effective August 1, 2024, but you will notice that for this, we have the rather unique circumstance. If you look at enclosure number 5, and the same will be true of enclosure 6, we need the policy which is existing where it says for use prior to August 1, 2024. And then if you turn 2 pages, you'll see what is the completely new policy, and thus redlining this made no sense. We just needed to see an entirely new draft, and this is for use on or after August 1, 2024. And for a very long time, long past any of us, we will need to have both of them maintained as part of our policy manual on the school website, based on whichever circumstance a victim or someone else is claiming to have had an incident or needing to report something regarding Title IX. So just wanted to explain that. But again, we are looking to get this approved tonight.
Questions, comments? Members of the public? All right, back to the board. All in favor? Vote is 9-0. Inclusion number 5, or I'm sorry, 8C, with the recommended motion that the Board of Education approve policy 5145.4, Title IX of the Education Amendment of 1972, prohibition of sex discrimination and sexual harassment. Moved by Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly, seconded by Mrs. Jacobson.
Again, and this is also just a quick policy lesson to the board. You'll notice that the main difference between the two is the number. Policies that begin in the 4,000s affect our certified and non-certified staff. The policies in the 5,000s are the student policies. So while you'll be looking at them and say, this looks extremely familiar, it's the idea we could have had it just be one. The policy committee was not in favor of that. If I'm a student, I'm looking at a student section. If I'm a staff member, I'm looking at the staff member section. But in fact, the text should look very familiar. And once again, we have to have the prior to August 1, 2024. And then 2 pages later, you'll see it's for use on or after August 1, 2024.
Questions or comments? To the public?
This is the new mic.
They're in the ceiling. Speak up.
There was a podium a long time ago, dating myself. I just wanted to.
Can you have your name and address for the record, please?
Richard Donovan's, Sherwood Drive, Southport. I would just like to readdress the issue of whether or not you publish a notice to the students. Since this policy is such a wide change and includes so many more issues, it includes pregnant students and accommodations for them. It includes all sex orientation, gender, all that stuff, which was not included previously. It also is very imperative that everything is the same language from the policy across to your student handbooks. If I read to you, I took a picture because we were discussing the difference between the handbooks and the policy. In the Ludlow High School policy, it says Title IX is a federal law requiring equal opportunity for students. No, it's not. I mean, that is the partial definition, but that is not even complete. And this was from the current one, so that you're not even including the information that changed under the regulations in 2020. You're way behind on that. And so if a student is looking at this, they don't know that their issue may actually be a Title IX issue. You have a separate section in the handbook for sexual harassment. It needs to be under the same title, and they should reference the same policies so that students know what applies to Title IX and what doesn't apply to Title IX. It also talks about different ways for reporting, whether you look at sexual harassment or if you look at Title IX, it gives different ways of reporting. That should all be the same, so that whether you look at the policy in the 5,000 section or in the handbooks, it's referencing all the same ways of reporting. It saves the school issues and it saves the students issues. I really am glad that the board is finally bringing this forward. It is well past due. And I hope that you spend as much time training your students as you do your staff. I know you're training your staff a lot, and I know it's a big effort, and I truly appreciate it, but I hope that you can spend some time educating your students as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more public comment? Back to the board. Any further comments? All in favor? It's another 9-0 vote. Thank you very much. We have item 8D, approval to delete policy 5145 with the recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the deletion of policy 5145.5, exploitation sexual harassment. Moved by Mr. Maxon-Canale, seconded by Mr. Asa.
So this is very simply that all of the ideas of this have now been incorporated into the newly approved Title IX policies, thereby rendering this redundant, and it made no sense to have it in two different places because this is now outdated anyway. So the reason for the deletion is to have all the information in one place.
Any comments from the board? Any comments, questions, or comments from the public? Seeing none, back to the board. All in favor? It was an 8-0. All right, first reading of policy 3020/3230, state/federal funds. Back to Canale.
I mean, this is a nice short one. I think it's fairly self-explanatory. But if there are any questions, happy to address them.
Questions at the moment? Being none, we'll move on.
Recess.
Let's take a 3-minute recess.
5-minute recess.
5-minute
5-minute
recess.
recess.
It's Carol's bylaw.
Oh.
All right. Unanimous consent for a 5-minute recess, so Ms. Guernsey can come back and talk about her bylaw amendment.
Sure, yes.
We'll come out of recess.
I always.
Jason, sit down.
What the hell? I got it.
All right, thank you for everybody for your patience. We'll move on to item 9, consideration of possible action on bylaw amendment. I'll turn this over to Mrs. Guernsey.
So much. So what you have in front of you is almost exactly what I presented at the last meeting, with the exception in paragraph. Oh, wait. Right. We're talking about it first or?
We can talk about it first and then make a motion if you want to,
So in that second paragraph, the curriculum committee shall meet at least 4 times a year. At least are new words, and that's showing, it's intended to show that this committee is meant to be flexible. You know, I've talked to Mr. Testani about this committee. He thinks it's a good idea. I mean, I can let him speak for himself, but the idea that we would work with the staff to determine the appropriate times for those meetings to take place, like times of the year, right? So that it's useful to them and to us. You know, I took the board feedback about, you know, do we need to delete where this is in the bylaw, where it lays in the bylaws now, like that I'm currently in? And I think it's best to keep it in because in the same way that the finance committee has a liaison to the Board of Finance, the curriculum committee can still have the liaison to the schools, Fairfield Public Schools Curriculum Committee, which is mandated by the state. So I just thought that that should lay there. You know, in terms of having it organized where board members can kind of come and go freely, that this format would invite that outside of the 3 curriculum members. I mean, all of our meetings will be public and anybody can come to any of those meetings if the subject was of interest to them. And of course, during committee reports, we could talk about what, you know, would be on it for the next meeting. So I hope that this sort of meets concerns that the board shared with me. I would like to make a motion and put it up for a vote today, so.
I second it. So moved by and seconded by Mr. Krasnoff.
The motion that's on the top of the paper.
So, yeah, I mean, should I start reading it or you want to leave it?
Go ahead and
or-
read it. We'll do it.
Okay, so the motion, I move that the Board of Education bylaws be amended to insert the following language in policy 9,000 bylaws of the board. After Article 2, Section 4C, and to adjust the remaining section alphabetization as needed. And then the text that you see in red, that's not part of the motion, but that would be the additional text.
And seconded by Mr. Krasnoff. Ms. Tracy?
Yeah, I had, to Mrs. Guernsey, I had asked Superintendent Testani, you were not here at the last meeting. So I was interested in the meetings and communications that Mrs. Guernsey had with you and or Dr. Zavajancic, and your thoughts. I had specifically said I wanted to hear, and then I have a couple.
Sure. So as I think I proposed in an email a few weeks back, the formation again of a teaching and learning committee. I think when you read the purpose of the committee shall be as follows. It does meet the definition of what we were looking for as a district. So things like textbooks, curriculum documents can be vetted through this committee. Just like policy gets vetted through policy, just like budget and other items get finance, facilities, the master plan, the capital waterfall, just so that when we get to the board table, we've already been, we've already solicited input. We've answered a lot of questions, not that the others won't have questions, but it just won't be myself or Dr. Zavajancic, Dr. Parrish, or whomever speaking to this. We'll have the committee as well to help support the work that has come out of the committee. So how we schedule this, I think, is going to be very strategic on when we meet based on need and also when people are available in terms of, try to stay away from summertime unless, there could be some special meetings. Certain cases, as the curriculum writers are doing their work, if some questions arise. So don't anticipate that happening too often, but early September-ish we talked a little bit about, so that we can finalize things before coming before the board in late fall. But whomever is willing to be one of the three members, I think this would be very helpful to us as a district in terms of not flying sometimes blindly through the curriculum writing process. So that's where we're at.
So I appreciate that. I guess my concern lies in so many of these times this winds up being and should be a full board discussion when we get curriculum documents. And I guess I'm not 100% sure or convinced that the work of this committee 4 times a year wouldn't just be redundant of basically what you're talking about there and then doing it again at the board table. And I have in number 2 here, I have concerns about the way it's written here, where it says, work with the superintendent and staff to monitor cycles of curriculum review, mechanisms for organized feedback, but then approval of curriculum resources. The way I read that is that this committee, similar to policy, would be voting out something before it came to the board, and I would have a serious reservation about that. Whether that's the intention or not, that's how I interpret how it's worded. I get what you're saying. I'm just having trouble understanding if this is really needed. And then the last thing I just want to say is I don't understand why we would leave the liaison position in if we had this. That to me is too much redundancy. I heard you say as a liaison to the state. So if that were the case, I think we need to reword the liaison position or redo it. But I don't see how we could have both.
So if I can speak to that. So Mr. Testani used the word vetted. I wouldn't use that word. I don't anticipate that this committee would approve anything. And in fact, the idea behind it and the intention, and especially in number 2, it's working on the monitoring of these things. So like, for example, we have these cycles that are really askew, like world language. The reason the books came to us today, not with the curriculum, is because they're off cycle. And I had no idea that that was happening until the summer. So this committee can monitor as these projects move forward, and it's a check-in point. The curriculum committee that exists by law has met, as far as I know, I've been invited to 1 meeting in 2 years. So that's like a separate entity that this board doesn't have control of. That's happening outside of the board. So it's important, I think, to have a liaison position to that committee when and if they decide to meet. So this is about an opportunity to organize the board feedback, right? Because like right now, we had the book review. There was 1 board member that looked at the book. We have like Google Forms and maybe 1 or 2 people are giving feedback. And then at the table, like there's all this flurry. So how can we improve that system, right? So it's not that the people that sit on this committee would be making decisions about what should be in the curriculum. It's about that communication piece and monitoring that. So that's the intention. And I do think that all the curriculum discussion should be at the board table. That's where it belongs. It's not meant to, this committee is created in response to the liaison position that simply wasn't working. So this is a solution. I'm suggesting that we try it. And if it doesn't work, we can do something else. And, Mr. Testani was suggesting it at the, these are 2 like parallel ideas. So I think like from both sides, it could be helpful. But I understand your concerns. I think that just like the interpretation is different, right? Anyway, okay.
So, Mr. Krasno,
Just, yeah, if you don't mind, just because it's still in here. So 2 things then. So the word approval of curriculum resources is a sticking point, but also it says in here in number 3, vet new curriculum related ideas. So I think it's, that lines up with Mr. Testani said. I know what you're saying, but it does conflict there with what.
So like vetting the idea is different than giving feedback and approval on it. So that's why like that word is a tricky one. I mean, if you have an amendment to this that you want to, suggest something other than vet, that's fine. But anyway.
Mr. Krasnoff?
So just to elaborate on that, the way I would envision this committee works in terms of vetting would be something comes and doesn't seem robust enough for those three people. They can give the feedback that it needs to be a little bit more thought out before it came to the board, instead of us making them feel like it wasn't vetted or thought out enough or robust enough. It's just like a stopgap before it comes to the full board. Also, another example might be like ELA for me, going K through 12 was a lot of information to get in 2 weeks. My hope would be this committee would say, let's start and break it up a little bit and then do it together. Because obviously you need to see the flow through the grades, but it's easier to read it like in pieces, at least from my standpoint. And I did get that feedback from a few people. It was just a lot of information. Just like the media one, we just got that was 500 pages. I would have rather had a little more time to read through every single one of those pages, but I didn't. So that's kind of what my thinking the committee would do.
Mr. Lee?
I don't want to see this committee though micromanage the central office from getting involved in curriculum and then second guessing everything that comes in front of them, right? I understand we want to say, but I have to trust Dr. Z and his staff and Janine Goss in that office. I don't think it's our responsibility to say, no, you can't do this, because you know what's going to end up happening? They may think it's the best thing. You may disagree at the committee level, but it's still presented to the board. And you still are going to have your objections the same way. So I don't want to see it being micromanaged. And then, you have teachers that are working. I don't also want to kind of show like an intimidation that, the Board of Ed's sitting on this meeting today too. And I want to avoid that. With this, I get the need. I mean, the liaison position, if we're having issues, then maybe something needs to be done where you are invited in. I mean, I don't know why you said you haven't been in 2 years. I don't know where that breakdown is, but I want to make sure this committee doesn't undermine what's going on behind the scenes and then drags out the process too.
Ms. Jacobson?
So thank you for bringing this forward. I think this is a great idea, and I think it's a good idea to give something different a try than what we've been doing. Most districts do have this committee. And I think I'm reading this and interpreting it as a helpful tool and resource to the administration to avoid some of the things that we've had in the last few rounds versus but I do hear your concern, and I think it's good to put that, because I had a concern too around the monitoring of the cycles, and I got clarified because I want to make sure that we don't get off cycle because of the committee. That's one thing I want to make sure, right? That you're not holding something for 3 years and now we're off cycle with everybody. So I just want to make sure that I wanted to get clarified that the monitoring of the cycles is to make sure we keep on track and not get stuck or bogged down in not moving something to the full board. And on that point, just like with policy, whoever becomes the chair, hey, we're looking at K-5 art next week. It's in the backup, like just like we do with other policy, or other committees, the full board has an opportunity to raise any questions, attend, whatever it may be in the process. So hopefully we all can, for people who choose to do so or not. I share Mr. Ace's concern just about that approval of curriculum, and not because the 9 of us are hearing explained approval of the curriculum resources. I mean, but again, just it's a bylaw. It'll take 2/3 to change it, whatnot in the future, just for people not think, well, the 3 of us get to approve all the books because that's what this bylaw says, or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So I might, and unless I'm, Mr. Ace and I are alone in this, might suggest a change to review or something like that instead of approve. So that would just be my only thing. So again, I'm very much in favor of that. And hey, I agree. If it doesn't work or it's not helpful, then we revisit it.
Where do we want to start this?
I just
I'm
want
gonna
to.
ask you a question. What you ended with, if it's not helpful in terms of whose eyes?
Well, I mean, helpful in terms of like, we're trying
I'm
to
saying if
solve
it's not
these-
helpful to the committee writing the curriculum, the teachers and
Then
you
you
want
can
to
give that feedback
you
then.
want to hear, okay, just, that's all. Okay.
Yeah, I definitely.
Thank you. Here,
I thought that's what you meant.
you're on record.
Yeah, I just want to be clear because that's what I thought you.
I just want to thank Ms. Guernsey for this bylaw. I wasn't at the last meeting, so I didn't get to speak to it, but in the interim, I did spend a little bit of time looking at districts locally and around the state, and I would say the vast majority have some style of this committee. They often have different titles or names to what Mr. Tasani spoke to in other meetings in leadership, so I think this is a good movement forward. I think it aligns what the board has been trying to do through policy, through the liaison position. I think getting it in this style of a committee is a really great idea, and I'm really happy to see kind of a collective feedback approach from the superintendent to all of us as board members. So I appreciate the work.
Ms. Rayson. One of the other things we talked about are the feedback from multiple board members last time, not myself, but I thought it was a good point, was appointments to this committee, when they would happen, and would it change based on what curriculum was being looked at? And some people mentioned like areas of expertise or whatever. So I'm curious if you gave any thought to that, or I don't know if you talked with the chair about how that would work.
Can I respond to that?
Please.
Yeah, so I did think about it, and we also spoke about it in leadership, and the idea of having a committee that stays constant. So there are people that are interested in curriculum in general. And then depending on, one meeting could be about every meeting could be about like 3 different subject areas or one subject areas. Like, I don't know what that will look like. So for the board to know what will be the subject or topic of this meeting, then anyone who has that subject area expertise could attend that meeting.
Okay, and then, I mean, because one of my concerns actually that got flagged, Mr. Krasnoff made a comment. If the committee felt that an area wasn't robust enough, my fear, and not necessarily for this group of 9, but many of us that have been at this table for a while, some of them have said, think about down the road, think about future boards and whatnot. My fear always is wasting staff time. So if 3 members out of 9 are on a committee and they feel that something's not robust enough, but the other 6 may not. And now the staff times, I throw that out there, not to be pessimistic, but I think it is a concern of mine.
Ms. Glee?
Are you looking to start this, if you get approval tonight, immediately? So what I don't want to see is like, we have this the K through 5 still we haven't voted on. Are you looking to jump right into that and be involved with that?
I mean, unless there's, is that okay?
Please.
The idea that the committee would start at the beginning of our year was the impetus for me being motivated to bring this back to the table, right? So the idea that
To
we
create a
staff
meeting
it.
schedule to give to the town clerk.
So, we don't have to approve this today. If that's not the will of the board, that's fine. We'll just continue as is. But the idea that this committee would influence the K through 5 curriculum for library media, I don't think is even appropriate. Is that what you're getting at?
I want to make sure, like, whatever's on the table, whatever they're working on now, it's about to be presented to the board maybe the next month or so.
So
I don't know if I want that committee to jump right in, because you're actually playing catch up at that point with everything.
So this committee, for example, could meet and around this issue and talk about how can we get this board feedback to you in a way that is helpful to you, right? Because is the system that we have working right now, right? So, you talked about, we're going to talk at the board table, but these Google Docs are like working for some board members and maybe not working for others. So these are the kinds of issues that I think are most important for this committee, not to dictate what the curriculum is going to be.
Mrs. Jacobson?
I'm gonna follow up on that. I actually think that this could save staff time, because if you think about the last couple of curriculums, like how long did we hold out on grade 6A ELA? That was like months, right? And like, I see people nodding in the audience. How many rounds of revisions, right? So if we can get ahead of that a little bit, it might actually save time in the long run. Now we're holding back K5 because we want to talk about that. So it might actually be I mean, not would. It could be a time saver overall, right? More input on the front end versus after the fact to go back and change. So that would be my hope around what I'm aspirationally feeling that will be helpful. And, you know,
And that's what I was gonna say. If we're gonna do this, it needs to be whatever meetings that we need to have a beginning and end and a focus. Because if we have a meeting, say scheduled at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we can't sit around spinning our wheels for 3 or 4 hours.
yeah, and
It's not gonna be helpful.
I mean, and maybe Mrs. Guernsey can speak to this. The 4 times, you do have if 2 people want to meet, so that's fair. But do you see that 4 times being driven by staff? Like now we have a rough framework. We'd like
Yes.
you to get your preview. Okay, now we have a little bit more than a framework. We're starting to think about unit ideas. Like some of those meetings might be at the request of staff versus the chair of the committee per se, right?
I think all of it would be at the request of staff,
Yeah.
because I wouldn't know what their schedule is.
So, okay.
It would have to be, to Mr. Lee's point, at the beginning of the process of whatever we're starting on. Library media is basically, it's fully baked. We're ready to serve the meal. Maybe have to change some of the sides, but to go backwards, I think would be disrespectful to the folks that worked on it. And we won't have enough time. So I think as we get into the beginning of a process, you know, we're gonna get to science, we're gonna get, you know, social studies is starting to ramp up. Could jump right into social studies. You know, we have our cycles.
Mr. Krasnoff?
I just kind of want to respond to Mr. Hayes. So my hope would be that one, the chair would obviously assign the right people to this committee that would not take advantage of, like you said, trying to pull everyone's strings, and whoever the superintendent would obviously, or whoever's running curriculum is gonna try to keep them in check if they're getting out of line. But in terms of that,
I'm just thinking about it.
in terms of that also,
Let's focus on Mr. Krasnoff's comment.
in terms of that as well, I think it would be important for the committee to be able to go back and get some early feedback in a different form than a Google Doc maybe, because in some scenarios, this Google Doc is being filled out by the same 3 or 4 people. But we easily could have a conversation and maybe get other feedback without it being like necessarily in a Google Doc. Whether someone doesn't know how to write what they're trying to express in a Google Doc or whatnot, but that's how I kind of envision it. It's like a brainstorming and just people that are focused like a lot of the other committees are.
Mr. Racer, you had your hand up.
Yeah, some people don't fill out Google Docs because they trust the process and the administration, so for the record. So would you feel that the 4 dates would be for the town clerk more ceremonious and could be canceled, and then to speak to what they said about scheduling meetings as staff? Or would we know, like, if you had to get the town clerk a meeting, do you know 4 dates now that would work in line with the upcoming curriculum work and everything?
I mean, we would have to talk to whatever's coming up. So we'd have to talk with social studies folks to see when those dates, when they're gonna be ready to have anything to really talk about, or when they need to solicit information for. So before we would set the dates.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I mean, when we spoke earlier, Mr. Testani had said that it would be possible to predict what 4 dates could be, and then we would be flexible with
Yeah,
this.
because I mean, we know September would be something simply because we come to the board in November, so it gives us some time if we have to do anything based on the feedback. You know, obviously January, sometime in the early to late spring, right before the summer, as people go off to really do some of the really heavy lifting of the work. So.
And if I could just add one more thing, on number 2, I would just ask, and maybe this could be better clarified, but the way that I wrote that, I was intending to use the word monitor as the verb. So what we're monitoring is the cycles of curriculum review, the mechanism for organized board feedback, and the approval of the curriculum resources. So it's that we're monitoring those things.
Ms. Guernsey, if I may,
Yes.
I actually read it the first time exactly like that.
That's
Okay.
And but I understand
I
that
see
the
what
word
you're-
approval is kind of a
Yeah.
charged word. I have an amendment that I whipped up quickly if I might offer if that's all right. I just want to make sure that it still matches the spirit. So I'd make the amendment, edit purpose two, and I can get this to you. I'm sorry about this.
No, no
When I apply. Edit purpose two to read, work with superintendent and staff to monitor cycles of curriculum review, provide a mechanism for organized board feedback, and review proposed curriculum resources. And there's the word stacking of review, which I dislike, but it's the correct word, I think, for what your intention is. Can
Yeah, I think that is exactly my intention, and that's.
I have a second for that? Mrs. Rinaldi? Any other comments about that?
Just read that back again.
Sure. Edit purpose two to read, quote, work with the superintendent and staff to monitor cycles of curriculum review, provide a mechanism for organized board feedback, and review proposed curriculum resources. It's very simple. Any other comments, sir, on that? I'll take a vote on the amendment. All in favor? I know. Any other comments or? Thanks, Kelly.
A couple things. First of all, thank you for that. I was thinking, first of all, I had actually missed the verb on that, so I was misreading it. And thank you for saving me from embarrassing myself with an inappropriate amendment. So I love that change. I do want to ask what people think about the idea of adding to number one, which is at the end of it, information about and discuss curriculum and curriculum presentations. I would think that, again, just me, but so often I would think, why didn't they include this or that? And I would hope that that would be something that would be a very tangible focus of the committee of looking at that and giving feedback on the presentations. And however, in whatever way, whether it was just viewing slides or whatever it is.
That would be helpful.
So I'll say a couple of other comments first. I'm not going to try to mesh it with this. I will be bringing forward then a bylaw amendment next meeting. I don't believe the curriculum liaison position is appropriate anymore. And I very much respect, Mrs. Guernsey, how you defended that. It's just not working, and it's not for lack of will. It's sometimes something just doesn't work. And again, I'm the one that brought that one forward before. When this was kind of more what I had wanted to try to do, and I was talked into trying a different alternative. But I don't want to have something on there that we think will be meaningless. And I think this is what will be meaningful. This is what's going to achieve what we're looking for, but I'm not going to try to meld it into this as that. I will also be, and this is another thing I'm not trying to fix now, we do need to fix our policy numbers. Because believe it or not, with the policies 9,000, each of them within there have their own policy numbers by section. So I'll be looking to do a cleanup of that because we actually go from, I think, 9132 to 9134 and then 9133. So there's some cleanup in there. I have other work I've been supposed to be doing with bylaws, but that at least is something I'll plan to do for January. And also just a reminder that this notion that if there's a topic of interest that Board of Ed members can just show up, no, they cannot. We cannot hit 5 members. You could have 4 if one person was going to show up. And for example, at today's policy meeting, if Board of Ed members had, trickled in to hear the end of the policy meeting, it would have been okay, but not if they'd engaged in conversation. So it really is going to be incumbent upon whoever's the chair of that committee to give good reports to the full board, to get feedback, maybe to do things even by email if need be. But it really can't be, oh, this is a hot topic of interest. Let's 6 of us drop in on that meeting. We can't do that. So I would like to propose an amendment that at the end of number 1, we add the 3 words and curriculum presentations.
I'll second that.
I don't have anything else to say about it.
Any other comments? All in favor of the amendment?
Public,
The amendment.
Vote.
go to the public before we vote.
No, because this is a bylaw. This is our work.
Okay,
Yeah. All in favor of the amendment?
sorry.
No.
I just don't want any.
No, but this is our work. This is not something we're overly subject to public comment. All right, with that, I'm inclined to pull a vote unless anyone has a Additional comment. All in favor of the motion as amended? We have Mr. Krasnoff, Ms. Jacobson, Mrs. Flynn, Mr. Peterson, Mrs. Guernsey, Mrs. Maxon Cannelli, Mr. Asa, and Mr. Rinaldi. Against? Mr. Lee. Motion passes 8. Which is enough. I should have said it requires 2/3 vote because of the bylaw amendment, but we were there.
Can I just make a friendly reminder that on the bylaw, when we get posted, that we'll have the 11/26 date and the 12/10 date then? Right now, it still stands as June 25th. Just
okay.
make sure we don't lose track of all of these changes. So, sorry.
Okay, we'll move on to number 1, discussion of possible comment on the plan of conservation and development update. This is something that I know Ms. Jacobson has been on it for quite a while. The plan of conservation development, and for many of you board members who came on the fall of last year, this was one of the first things that we did was receive an update from the conservation commissioner, Mr. Wen, conservation director, Mr. Wen. As I understand from watching the town planning and zoning meetings and speaking to some members on that committee, this plan is nearing completion. They're looking to button it up relatively soon, having had some public discussion for several meetings now. At this point, I wondered whether there would be enough energy on this board to make a general comment on the state of the plan. One of the things that I think the plan lacks, and we talked about this last November when we had the presentation, was the lack of an education section, a dedicated education section in that document. Something that could be added is references or incorporation of our long-range facilities plan, which we have completed since they were here last. So I tried to come up with something that was just a very general statement, but just to start the discussion, if there's something that we can get that we can put all 9 of our names to, just to make sure that we have a voice in this process, I think would be helpful. And so this is what I came up with very quickly. And I stole some language directly from Ms. Jacobson. A public comment that she made earlier this year. I hope that was okay. I ran that by her first. But hopefully I just wanted to get some comments, and maybe this is something we can, I can solicit, email comments for the next few weeks. This is going to come back up on the TPZ's agenda, I believe, actually on the 6th of January. It's going to conflict with our meetings. Their meetings always conflict with our meetings. But in any event, I think that I'm interested to get a board statement, if possible, if there is motivation for that, before this plan gets approved by that committee. And with that, Mrs. Jacobson.
Thank you. Before I get into the content, I agree and have been advocating for that for a while. And I think we all have, and we had the meeting last time too. And I think the community has expressed a desire for that, as it already exists within the current POCD. Small, but it's there. Just for full transparency, I did submit a letter my own self about a month ago to TPZ, just as my own resident self, with this page 51 edit as one of my edits, and a couple of other little small changes. So I appreciate bringing it forward. I am interested in. I think this one, just from my perspective, I'm not comfortable with some of the language that's in here. But if you're willing to take some time to edit it, I do think it would be powerful, or at least helpful for the board to have some stamp on it, as long as it's a strong statement, and it's addressing. I'm not interested in putting my name on something that's like, just please don't forget about us, right? Like, what specifically do we want? What do we want for them to understand? They did receive, after our meeting, our long range facilities plan in the summer. They also received a recording, the commissioners, I'm speaking of, the minutes of our meeting when they were here before us, just so the actual commissioners received that, and a recording. So they have some idea of some of the things that people at this table expressed during that meeting as well. So yes, not this exactly for me, in front of me, but yes, I would be happy to help. And I'm also happy to send to anybody who wants it a copy of what I did submit already. So thank you.
And again, just I'm not saying this. I'm saying this. I needed something to start.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mr. Ason.
So you're saying they meet on? When?
I believe the next meeting is the-
January 6th.
So in order
Meeting tonight.
for us to get something as signed by the board, we really have to agree on it tonight. To get it to them before their vote.
I know, but I thought that that was going to be too high of a hill to climb. I don't believe that they are going to approve this at their earliest January meeting. But I think that if we can have something at that point, if we can vote something out in our first January meeting, then that will get to them in time.
Okay, I just wanted to understand the timeline.
Timeline is not completely firm, but I do not believe, I know that the January is going to be when it comes back before their board.
I do support the idea of this.
Max McFeely?
I have to admit, I've, from the beginning of this, but number one, totally support the notion that we need to put our stamp on this. I'm trying to remain positive in my language right now regarding the degree to which, I don't know, a positive way to say we've been ignored. Utterly disregarded and viewed as irrelevant. I don't know how to say it. And I'm not necessarily saying it's, I gave up on the positive part because I couldn't figure out a way to say it. But I don't understand, I admittedly am a little bit ignorant of exactly how the TP&Z functions. I am not looking to impugn my fellow elected officials. I don't know where that line is being drawn regarding, because they do have, professional staff who seem to be driving the POCD, and I'm not quite understanding what the TP&Z's role is in editing said document. The elected officials are the ones advocating for the town of Fairfield. The staff doesn't live in Fairfield, and I don't understand that dynamic. But what I know is that we gave very specific feedback toward how they are impacting the schools and how the density, they are getting very specific with the POCD, which my understanding is a POCD does not have to be so specific regarding all those zoning changes, all of which are geared to increasing density. Okay, I will admit that was a little bit of an aside because that's going out of my reach, but I guess what I would be interested in, this is kind of uncharted territory. I'm not sure how we as a board function at this, but what I would be interested in doing is, because to Mr. Ace's point, that I don't understand why they're in a rush. They don't have to do this till November 2026. So where the urgency is coming from on their part, I know developers are very appreciative of speed. I don't understand why Fairfield elected officials are, again, not my purview. But what I would be interested in us coming out of here with is that if this is something we'd be amenable to, if we charge the chair with contacting the officials to say, we would like to craft an education section. We asked for an education section. I totally get that maybe that's not something that they're comfortable with doing because this is our field. But a education section we can get behind, and then maybe in addition, because I completely agree with Mrs. Jacobson, I don't want some meaningless fluff that provides no direction. But an education section plus additional suggestions. But I think the best we could do here tonight, because no one wants to stay here and wordsmith this right now, is to charge Mr. Peterson with contacting them to express our interest in contributing. And however that works, again, I'm not sure where to go with it from there.
Mr. Krasnoff.
I appreciate this letter. I think it's very important. We do make some sort of statement because of the lack of any coordination. But to that point, I feel it's important we make it clear because they continually say they're meeting with us on a regular basis. I think as a board, we need to really put it in writing. That we disapprove with a lack of coordination with the board. And really make a forceful statement from us saying, you may be saying you're coordinating a meeting with us, but you're really not. I just think it's important for the public to be aware and to be in writing to them in a letter.
Jacobs.
I just want to point out a couple of points of technical nature for board members, in case you're not aware. When the commission or Mr. Went was before us, we were working off a July 2023 draft of the POCD. There's been 2 iterations, one in February of 24. So right now, if interested in seeing how they've changed, there's the August 2024 version, which I will say one positive change is that they did put schools on a map. Which was
No longer parks.
no longer municipal park. The parks are also there, but we now have a map that have dots at least that show our schools. So there is some changes that have been made. But go ahead.
Yeah, point one thing out about that map is that they also put things like the American Legion Hall on the map that have schools. I mean,
it's like a community facilities.
It's,
I
I agree. You're right. I should acknowledge the positivity of the progress.
But yeah, and I can share, if I didn't already, did I share that with you? Page 5 and page 12. So there's a few pages where I think we could be impactful, and that's on the big goals page, right? Like, what are the goals of this plan, and inserting something on schools. And then there's the cited planning documents where they talk about like the bicycle and pedestrian long-term plan, the affordable housing plan, the Parks and Rec master plan. That's a place to insert our plan if we. So there's a couple of other points before page 51, which I also wrote that too, but just to get it a little bit earlier in that, it would be my advocacy before, earlier in the document prior to page 50. So just a few thoughts.
Mrs. Flynn?
Thank you very much for the work, Mr. Peterson, Jacobson. I very much support and echo what board members have said before me, and I won't waste too much time. But I would just ask, how do you envision this process for us over the next few weeks? Like, how do you want to solicit feedback? What do you think is the most, as much as I agree with Ms. Jacobson, I think Ms. Jacobson, Max and Kennelly, that wordsmithing at this table isn't going to happen. How do you kind of envision us doing that work?
I can imagine some, if I'm the central point and I get comments from individual board members, I can put out additional drafts without convening a new meeting.
Okay.
But it would have to be done in that.
So no shared Google document, something more like it's coming directly to you and then.
I think I'd be cautious about a Google document. I mean, that may be the best way to do it, but I don't want to run afoul of any public meeting issues.
No, and I totally agree. I just think it's important for the public.
And ultimately, for the public, I want to have a public document that we release as a closure on agenda and we vote in public session. Ms. Jacobson.
I'd like to marry, as you begin to ponder, Mrs. Max and Kennelly and Mr. Krasnoff's concepts with understanding and acknowledging the disparate impact that happen in different facilities because of the zoning issue. But we're not, that's not our purview. But it's this constant notion that we've been trying to say of acknowledging the disparate impact. Right. And that's going to be an ongoing issue for us. Right. It just is. So however that language works in, and I know I have it in my letter, but I just I would say if I'm marrying them and we're being stronger in our place, what do we really want to say? Right.
Just to be clear, you're talking about development that's concentrated in the McKinley and Holland Hill and get understand entirely.
Thank you. That's all I'm missing.
Thoughts or comments? All right, so at this point, I hit me with whatever you got. And I will just try to, run through this iteratively and try to come up with something that hopefully will meet with the approval of all 9 of us. And in between, I certainly am happy to reach out to the chair of the CPZ and let them know that something may be coming and that we have thoughts and comments. Hopefully we can get it under the deadline.
Well, there's no deadline.
I understand, although to be devil's advocate into their argument is that the 2016 version was not a full review, was not a full overhaul. So that they're eager after having done a year and a half, 2 years of work on it to move ahead. That if you listen to their arguments, that's what they say. It's not that the 2016 was not as comprehensive and overviewed as they put it.
Sounds like from here, we're not that far apart. You just need to tweak the words.
In terms of members, with members, yeah. Well, that was my hope. I didn't mean to assume, but having spoken to a lot of you individually about this topic, I thought we could find some common ground. And I hope we can, and I'm happy to ramp it up a bit. Oh,
Just one last suggestion. I think in all likelihood, I know Mrs. Jacobson has spent more time on this probably than anybody on the board, is that I do think, not having read it, that whatever her letter was, which she's already offered to the board, might be a decent starting point as well. And then whatever mechanism you come up with for getting our feedback, I look forward to. So we don't have to do anything to empower you to contact, right? You just do it.
no, but hearing the sense of the table is also helpful. All right. Well, let's move on then. Thank you for that. Superintendent's report.
Yeah, just a couple of things. So we hit on it earlier, obviously regarding technology. Just an update, we have been working to remove the Chromebooks from going home on a nightly basis for our third graders. So I know many of our parents are happy that those aren't going back and forth. There were some teachers, schools, parents who saw some value, so we compromised that we would send it home one night because there's some competitions at certain schools in terms of work, especially in the area of math program. So we compromised and said they can go home one evening, but it would definitely not be for the weekend. So try to eliminate that, and we're going to push that forward to 4th and 5th grade for next year, or possibly the end of the year if we have any surplus money in our IT budget to try to do that. So those are staying in the classrooms and charging in 3rd grade. Just so everyone's aware, we are pushing and trying to support what our parents have been asking for. We had a great visit on Friday from the Connecticut State Department of Education Literacy ELA consultant Joanne White. She visited Fairfield and wanted to see our new ELA curricula in action. We visited Holland Hill, Jennings, and Fairfield Woods Middle School. She was quite impressed. We received an email afterwards from her, but also her commentary as she visited the classrooms with the practices she observed at Holland Hill and Jennings specifically, as well as the 6th and 8th grade ELA classes that she observed at Fairfield Woods Middle Schools. Let's give everyone an update there. The Fairfield Public Schools Green Team is holding its first annual holiday resale to encourage members of our community to shop secondhand for the holidays. Items are being collected now through tomorrow and will be available for purchase on December 15th at Roger Ludlow Middle School. All proceeds will benefit the Green Team projects in the Fairfield Public Schools. So if you want to contribute or you want to go and do some shopping, please do that and support the Green Team. As you already heard, we had some press from the Connecticut Post on our Fairfield Ludlow High School art and photography students who reached beyond their local community to create a professional portraits display of students at the Adam J. Lewis Academy in Bridgeport. This was a special project made possible by a grant secured by the District Art Department Coordinator, Michelle Hermanson from the Connecticut State Department of Education, and also in partnership with Donors Jews. It really put a smile on many kids' faces as we approach the holidays. So great job by the art department and art students at Fairfield Ludlow High School. As you heard from our board reps, Fairfield Ludlow High School football made its first ever playoff berth this year. They fell short against Darien, but it was quite an accomplishment. So congratulations to the young men who worked extremely hard from the summer all the way through to make the playoffs. As you also heard, WFC held its first ever first quarter award ceremony last week. Mr. Mancusi and I attended and got to see, we had several students receive awards, but the amount of parents who came in and supported their children in the process and also supported the other kids, even if their child wasn't receiving an award, was quite impressive to see that entire school community come together to celebrate academic achievement and civic duty. That was great. Just as we get toward the end, toward the break, I know everyone's really busy. It is the season of giving. So if everyone, just want to remind everybody, take a little time. count your blessings and maybe give back to someone who may not be as fortunate in our community or in a neighboring community. I think it's always important to give as much as we receive, if not more. So I just want to be us to all be mindful of that. We are pretty fortunate in all the things that we have, and get to sit here and help lead a phenomenal district with our great families, students, and staff. And to that, I just want to wish everyone, since it is our last meeting, happy holidays, happy new year, all our staff, families, students who may still be watching at home. So, you never know. There's always a few. And to our one person in the audience who's hanging in there. Thank you, Mark.
Any questions, comments on the update?
I just have a very quick question. Mr. Testani. With the Chromebooks, is there the ability, if a family wants to opt in to it going home, is that an option for?
Yeah, we had one or two people ask about that, so it's something we're gonna discuss. They want it home every night. One of the things that came up, it becomes challenging when one kid's taking it home and the other kids want to take it home, and then their parents don't want it at home, but it's something we're gonna discuss. We just wanted to get it kicked off. Always make adjustments along the way. We're not locked into it.
Can I follow up on that quickly? One of the concerns about the everybody takes it home, nobody takes it home swing, is I just want to be conscious of, and I don't know if this exists, of where that might be the sole device in home. And that I don't even know if those people would in that case, if they would advocate in order to need to take it home. So I just want us to be conscious if there are circumstances where our family is relying on that to be at home. So I just wanted to raise that one issue.
Well, it is something we talked about, but at the same time, the district devices do have restrictions. They should be used by the student for educational purposes only. If this is a device that they're relying on for adults in the home or someone else, that's all. But we are conscious of that, yes.
All right, we can move on to committee and liaison reports. Ms. Flynn?
For PTA Council, the next meeting of the President's Council is on December 18th. This is a new setup that they have going this year. I think this is the 4th meeting. They're great, and kind of utilizing a new voice for our PTA presidents all together, almost monthly. And the next general meeting of PTA Council will be on January 15th. And then just throw out there, Fair for Cares Coalition will be meeting next Wednesday, the 18th at 8:30 a.m. And the search is still out for a new coordinator. The posting is listed through the Fairfield Public Schools, but if you know anyone in that field, I would recommend checking it out.
Krasnoff.
CES last Friday actually had their legislative breakfast. It was actually a great event. We had Representative Leeper, who is now the chair of education, was there. Representative Vahey and Representative Kitt all came. There were also superintendents, board chairs, and CES members from throughout Fairfield County. It was a really good discussion. Some of the topics were facilities, special education, funding. If anyone has any questions about some of the questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Board of Health met yesterday and we elected a new board. I did not throw my hat in to be chair. I'm not a doctor or a nurse, but we did get to meet the new head of the school nurse and Nurse Payne. She's really great, really wonderful, and she has really great background, and she's met all of the school nurses at all of the schools, the various schools, and she is very positive overall. So very excited about her.
Great, thank you. I'll say Finance Committee met last week. We discussed progress on the upcoming budget, and also got a little more detail on the transportation study that First Student has done for us. So that may be something that comes up during budget season, so it's good to get a little preview of that. Who's next, Kelly?
Forgot to mention that for policy, we've got one more Title IX policy coming to you. We just approved it tonight. This is, again, we're looking for a one and done on January 7th. We have, so now Title IX for staff, we have Title IX for students, and this will be in our community section. So just a heads up to everybody, the wording is going to look very familiar.
Thank you. I'll also add that as I updated you all via email last Friday, Mike and I and Ms. Guernsey and Mr. Lee went to a meeting at Town Hall with the first selectman and the facilities working group that's been convened to work on our projects. I have gotten some comments from some of you on the matrix, and those will be forwarded to the first selectman. Any further ideas that you have that you want communicated in that way, please let me know. I have no further update about when an RFP may go out, but I know that one of the reasons that he wanted to have this meeting was to let us know that have us understand the context of why that matrix was created that we received at our last meeting. So I talked a little bit about it in my email. If there's any further questions or comments, please come to me and I will give you the most up-to-date information I have, and hopefully we'll have a more comprehensive update by the time we're back in January. Ms. Jacobs.
Nothing on facilities. We're meeting next week, so that's coming up, but the legislative session is going to be starting soon, just piggybacking on Mr. Krasnoff at the beginning of January, so I'll be sure to bring attention that I think would be interesting to any of the executive directors, as I always do, and to, about anything really juicy.
We always rely on your updates, and thank you very much for your dedication to,
The cause.
Open board comment. Ms. Kelly?
Just wanted to say a quick thanks. I was going to do this in November, but we ran short of time in November. Thanks to Holland Hill for having me come in to talk about Odyssey of Mind, and then North Stratfield, just as a report to the board. I put two hats on, one to represent Odyssey of the Mind, and then also as the BOE rep to give them an update. So always welcome to to speak before our PTA and hear from them. And just put my plug in to follow up on Mrs. Guernsey's invite to them, is that I do hope our PTAs will contact Mrs. Flynn and request a Board of Ed member to come in, because I know we always enjoy it. I mean, I'm not sure how much people fight for all the curriculum and liaison and all of those other positions, but we're all interested in getting into those PTA meetings, and it's just an invaluable opportunity. So just hope PTAs will reach out to Mrs. Flynn.
Unlike our committee meetings, the PTAs often have cookies.
That too. Never a bad idea.
That would be a new thing for 2025.
Keep that in mind.
Happy holidays.
And happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Happy New Year and all
And
good
healthy.
things.
Any public comment?
Happy holidays to everyone. Thank you for listening to public today, what we had to say about the LMC curriculum. I just wanted to address the fact, the reason why we chose today to come in number and to speak of digital wellness, as you heard, is because there is no other time or place where technology comes up. There simply doesn't exist policy around technology in our curriculum at all. So the only time that we saw opening for it was in LMC. And the fact that you broke it in from 6 to 12, and obviously K through 5 will be coming. We appreciate that as well. However, I would advocate, even though there wasn't anything directly that we could suggest of the 500 pages, maybe a meaningful suggestion would be for time limits on K through 5. My 6-year-old came home crying because she was put in front of a computer screen, told that she had to do some kind of drawing. And this is a massive computer screen in front of a little tiny person, and her eyes hurt. And she went to our LMC specialist and said, I want to take a break. And she was told no, she had to keep going. And then on the other end, I've got middle schoolers who absolutely are using their Chromebooks to access, not mine personally, but a friend, use proxy sites to get onto Tubi to watch full-length movies during, downtime. I don't like flex time. That's concerning to me that we don't have policies that regulate those things. And at least, again, back to K through 5, I think if we put time limits on how much time we spend in the LMC on screens in general, I don't think it should be 50%. I think it should be far less. I think we should rely more. I'm not asking to go back to dark ages. Nobody is. I understand we're in 2024, but also we're in 2024 without a technology policy. How is that even possible? in 2018, you said, when Dr. Jones implemented the Chromebook usage. I don't think even 6 years ago, you could have predicted how far we've come in the world of technology. And that was only 6 years after 2012, when the first front-facing camera phone was implemented. So much changes in such a short period of time in the world of technology. I just think we're remiss to not address it. That's why we're talking now. And I wish there was another opportunity for us to talk about it, but I appreciate all the work you do on that.
Thank you so much. Any more public comment? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Mr. Asa, seconded by Mr. Lee. All in favor? Aye.
This is fun.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't ready.
She wants to stay.
It's just,
Happy holidays.
I voted